Chapter 657. On the way to Fuyang, Jin Xian felt that his master was absent-minded. He did not know what she was thinking. After following her for so long, this was the first time he saw her so absent-minded. "Master, we'll reach Fuyang City tomorrow." Jin Xin pulled on the reins and said from the side. Chu Qingyan nodded. "If we speed up, we will reach Fuyang in a day. However, we will need 3 days to transport the money back to Jiangnan. Then does young master need to rest for a night and set off tomorrow morning?" Su Yi asked. Chu Qingyan was amused. She turned to look at Su Yi, stroked her chin, and said, "Do you think that my skin is soft and tender and won't be able to withstand the impact?" Su Yi felt embarrassed as if he had been seen through. He quickly shook his head. "I wouldn't dare." "Su Yi, you are underestimating young master." She didn't even frown when she tried to stop the enemy for 3 days and 3 nights in the rain. "This is nothing. You can focus on your own matters. You don't have to worry about young master's matters." Lu Guang chuckled. Chu Qingyan's lips curled into a smile, then she ordered, "Let's speed up. We must reach the next town before nightfall to resupply." "Yes." Dozens of people each rode a horse and took a small path forward. In the gradually darkening evening, they were like a black cloud that swept across the land. At this moment, 2 figures each led a horse and slowly headed in the direction of Fuyang. Suddenly, the sound of horse hooves came from afar. In the blink of an eye, the figures disappeared. "Young master, those people don't seem to be weak in martial arts. I wonder which sect they are from." The person following behind him covered his forehead with his hand and looked into the distance. He clicked his tongue and said, "Zimo, don't you think that the young man in red looks familiar?" The lazy voice had a hint of hoarseness and purity, as well as a slight tremor that was hard to detect. "Who is it?" The person who was asked was confused. Although 5 years have passed, that familiar feeling, that pair of phoenix eyes slightly narrowed, and a bright dark light flashed in the depths of his eyes. A familiar feeling? He was a little confused. Just as he finished speaking, the master beside him had already led the horse over, jumped onto it, and waved his whip towards the group of people. "Young master, where are you going?" "Wait for me." Xuanqi Zimo immediately jumped onto his horse and galloped away. When he caught up with his master, Xuanqi Zimo asked curiously, "Master, who did you see? Could it be 5 years? A red-clothed youth? A familiar feeling? Could it be her?" But the master beside him pursed his lips, the expression on his face was very complicated. It was as if he was happy and scared at the same time. He was scared that he guessed right and scared that he guessed wrong. The young girl who had been hidden in his master's heart for 5 years. Higashio Motetsu's eyes were locked in front of him. Since he had met him, he would not lose him. Quick! And Chu Qingyan, who did not know that she was being watched, had just arrived at this town called Deer Town. Because there were more horses and this town was smaller, the inn was not big enough to accommodate people, so they were split into 2 inns to rest. After eating dinner and feeding the horses, they could gather outside the town and continue their journey. Master, Lu Guang and Ma Yan brought 15 people to rest at the deer inn not far ahead. Jin Xian received the news from Lu Guang and immediately reported. Chu Qingyan nodded and let Jin Xian order food. This time, they had brought a total of 30 Jiangnan fierce cavalry with them. There were more than 10 people left in the bank because they were stewards and other clerical positions. Only these 30 were the secret guards and open guards that usually guarded the bank. There were also 15 fierce cavalry at their inn. At this time, they were scattered in various corners of the inn, eating quietly. Jin Xian, tonight we will take the official road. Tomorrow, we will go down the official road and take the smaller road. Chu Qingyan pondered for a moment before saying. Although they were not doing anything shady, they were still fierce cavalry. Although they did not have these 3 words written on their bodies, but with so many people rushing on the road, it would be too conspicuous. If there was a sharp-eyed busybody, they might be able to dig something out. So for safety reasons, Chu Qingyan made this arrangement. Okay. After following his master for so long, Jean Xian could also guess her intentions. Jean Xian, 11, 18, you three sit down and eat. After eating, let everyone rest for an hour and then we will continue on our way. Chu Qingyan called for them to sit down. The three sat down obediently. When the food was just served, Jean Xian suddenly spoke in a low voice. Master, don't you feel that someone has been paying attention to our table? Chu Qingyan's hand that was holding the chopsticks paused. She looked in the direction that Jean Xian's finger was pointing at. Night had just fallen and the gates of Deer City's yamen were closed. The county magistrate yawned and was about to return to his residence when 3 or 4 black-clothed people suddenly appeared in front of him. The sleepy person was instantly scared out of his wits. You, who are you? How did you get in? Someone come. The county magistrate was so scared that he sat down on his seat. His face was pale and his body was trembling as he looked at these uninvited guests. Shut up, look at this thing first. The leader of the black-clothed people shouted impatiently. Then he took out a token from his bosom and showed it to the county magistrate. When the magistrate saw the command medallion, he didn't quite believe it. He rubbed his eyes, but after taking a closer look, he immediately rolled down from his chair and knelt down. This humble subject has eyes but failed to see. This humble subject has offended you, sirs. Please forgive this humble subject. It's good that you recognize the token. Get up. The leader of the black-clothed people put away the token. May I know what official business you have for suddenly coming to my county? Do you need this official's cooperation? The county magistrate wiped the cold sweat on his forehead and slowly got up. He nodded and bowed as he asked. The higher-ups have ordered us to pursue a few important fugitives. Now that these people have escaped into your dear city, we ask for your cooperation. Immediately close the city gates. We want to catch the turtles in a jar. The leader of the black-clothed people said coldly. So it's to pursue fugitives. This official will definitely cooperate. I will give the order to close the city gates now. The county magistrate immediately bowed and called for a yamen runner. He immediately gave the order and the yamen runner left. Does Lord have any other instructions? The county magistrate turned around and asked politely. The leader of the black-clothed people said coldly, this matter is to be carried out secretly. I hope that Lord will not leak the news. No matter how big the commotion tonight is, the people in your county yamen must pretend that they don't know anything. Otherwise, I will not say anything more. Take care. The county magistrate was so scared that his legs went soft and he almost knelt down again. After they finished speaking, the few black-clothed people left the county yamen. Which inn is she at? She is at the Deer Inn. A portion of her men are at the Deer Inn. It is very advantageous for us. Good, tonight at 1 o'clock in the morning. Master said that we must eliminate the source of trouble. Yes. Chapter 658. Master, there's a letter from the palace again. Turan walked into the study with a letter in his hand. Xiao Su was painting at the moment. He didn't even raise his head when he heard the news. Leave it there. Turan nodded and placed the letter on the desk. Then, he asked worriedly, Master, the Empress has been sending letters so frequently recently. Is it because His Majesty has made some moves? Xiao Su drew a bird on the towering tree on the paper. His tone was indifferent as he said, Imperial Father's thoughts are nothing more than that. If there were any moves, we would already know. The border is in turmoil. Imperial Mother just wants me to return to the capital. Could it be that the Empress wants you to send troops to take command again? In the past few days, the conflict between Sichuan and Nansang at the border had become more and more serious. Although several riots had been forcefully suppressed, the resentment of the people had already formed. Nansang was holding back its anger. It was hard to say when it would explode. So, Turan came up with this guess. Xiao Su's brush paused, then he continued painting. Imperial Mother hasn't given up. If she could see the current situation clearly, she wouldn't be so worried. Since Imperial Father had sent him to Fuli mountain range, he had already removed him from the position of Crown Prince. He no longer had the qualifications to compete. It was just that no one brought this matter to the table. It was just that he left a way out for each other. However, Imperial Mother was unwilling to accept this. She didn't want to see the truth. So, in the past few years, she had been working with the Yang family to rope in the ministers of the court to resist Xiao Ran's position. Unfortunately, doing this would make Imperial Father even more unhappy and disgusted. Water Spirit sent news a few days ago that if the two sides were to go to war, the fourth prince would most likely take command. This news seems to have been finalized by His Majesty. It's not like the previous rumors. Turan thought of this and immediately reported. Xiao Su stopped painting. Don't blame Imperial Mother for sending letters these past 2 days. Let me see the letter. Turan immediately handed over the letter on the table. Xiao Su tore open the letter, then took out the letter and opened it. It was written on the letter, Su, the war is about to begin. Regardless of whether you are willing or not, Imperial Mother must volunteer to fight. Otherwise, you must keep an eye on your little princess consort. If she accidentally runs out and Imperial Mother sees her, don't blame Imperial Mother for being ruthless. Someone had to be sacrificed in the fight for the throne. Seeing the last word, Xiao Su's face turned cold. Mother Empress had actually set her sights on Qin Yan. Turan felt his master's aura turn cold in an instant. He was a little surprised. When he took the letter and read it, he understood why his master had changed. The Empress had always wanted her master to come forward, but her master had always ignored her, so she had no other choice but to use the young princess as a threat. The little princess seemed to have become his master's weakness. This thought made the earth spirit frown involuntarily. Master, the little princess consort went out today. Could it be that the Empress has already sent someone to take action? Xiao Su stood by the window with his hands behind his back. His eyes looked through the dark night and into the distance. Imperial Mother never uses peaceful means before resorting to force. So when the letter was sent out of the palace, the order had already been issued. You mean that when the letter arrived in Jiangnan, the Empress's people had already arrived? Turan was slightly surprised. Xiao Su's eyes turned cold. If my guess is right, they have already followed Qin Yan. Master, should we send people to reinforce the little princess consort now? Turan was a little anxious at this time. It's too late. Xiao Su's expression turned cold in an instant. The evening wind blew into the room and blew up the ink on the painting. On the paper, the bird under the banyan tree was locked in a birdcage. The golden cage shone with a cold light under the sun. Breaking the shackles of one's wings was always selfish. Just like his Imperial Mother. In the deer inn. Chu Qingyan followed Jean Xian's gesture and saw two people wearing veiled hats eating at a table at the corner of the stairs. They were dressed like Jianghu people. There was nothing suspicious about them, so she retracted her gaze. Jean Xian, did you see wrongly? Chu Qingyan asked. Jean Xian took a few more glances but didn't see anything unusual. He couldn't help but say, perhaps this subordinate is too cautious. Chu Qingyan smiled and said, hurry up and eat. We still have to hurry after eating. The people at the table nodded and were about to start eating when suddenly, the street became noisy. The city gates are closed. They closed early today. Why so early today? Isn't there still an hour? Who knows? The rules are just like the weather in June. They change at will. How can we, little commoners, care about it? The voices sounded. Although they couldn't hear clearly, they could more or less grasp the main point. 18, go and see what's going on. Chu Qingyan immediately ordered. Su 18 obeyed and left. After a while, he returned. Master, we can't go out tonight. The county magistrate ordered the city gates to be closed 15 minutes ago, Su 18 said with some annoyance. Chu Qingyan raised her eyebrows slightly. After pondering for a while, she said, the city gates have been closed, and they will not open until tomorrow. Since it has already been decided, we can only stay here. Things happened too suddenly, and I'm afraid many people did not manage to leave in time. One of you, go to the Little Deer Inn and tell Lu Guang and the others to book a room immediately. If not, you will have to sleep on the streets later. It's the same for us here. One of you, go and book a room with the innkeeper. Everyone nodded and went to do their own things. Chu Qingyan's fingers tapped on the table, calculating whether they could reach Fuyang tomorrow if they were delayed for one night. Later, she found that it was uncertain. She simply stopped thinking about it and ate in peace. At this time, Higashio Motetsu and Xuanqi Zimo were sitting at another table, watching Chu Qingyan and the others from afar. Young master, is that really Miss Chu? A girl changes 18 times between childhood and womanhood. The more she changes, the harder it is to recognize her. Xuanqi Zimo couldn't help but ridicule. There's no mistake. It's her. Although 5 years had passed and her facial features had grown more exquisite, she had grown taller, and she had become more confident. However, the aura and small movements that belonged to her had not changed or disappeared with the passage of time. Xuanqi Zimo's heart skipped a beat. He suddenly felt proud of his little girl's achievements. It was a strange feeling, but he liked it very much. Master, should we go over and say hello? Although he didn't know how the young master recognized her, he couldn't help but suggest that he despised his master for hiding in a corner and secretly observing her. Why are you in such a hurry? Can't you see that she's being watched? Higashio Motetsu knocked his subordinate's head with the fan in his hand. Is Miss Chu in danger? Xuanqi Zimo whispered. From the looks of it, that's the case. Higashio Motetsu's gaze swept across the several people wearing veiled hats in the restaurant. His almond-shaped eyes narrowed and his lips curled slightly. It seemed that the heavens were not unkind to him, creating such an excellent opportunity for him. He had to seize it. Chapter 659. Sure enough, after they booked their rooms, the inn was filled to the brim. After Chu Qingyan and the rest finished their meal, they returned to their rooms. Deer City was a small town and there weren't many scenic spots. Furthermore, she wasn't in the mood to go sightseeing as she still had to travel the next day. Thus, she laid down early to rest. However, the more one wanted to sleep, the more awake one would be. Especially Chu Qingyan, who had been forcing herself to be tense for the past 2 days, not daring to think of anything else. Thus, once she relaxed, she started to let her imagination run wild. In a foreign land, in the dead of the night, all sorts of emotions would swarm over. This was the first time she had left Big Ice Cube alone and stayed overnight in a foreign town. It was a little pretentious to say that she missed him alone. She had only left for a day. However, when she recalled that she had left without saying goodbye, she felt that she had lacked consideration. She didn't know if Big Ice Cube would be suspicious if he knew. However, she was really afraid to see him today. It wasn't because of fear, but because of guilt. This kind of guilt was very strange. It came from the depths of her heart and was an unfamiliar emotion. She lifted the blanket and walked to the window. At this time, the moon was bright and the stars were sparse. The clouds were thin and the sky was hazy. She sat on the chair and rested her chin on her arm, quietly in a daze. When Chu Qingyan was in the modern world, her life revolved around family and friendship. Her social circle was relatively simple. As for love, she had come into contact with it the most in novels. However, she had never thought that it would happen to her. Furthermore, she was resistant to the answer in her heart. Thus, that little bit of germination was tightly suppressed by her. However, she couldn't help but miss him. I wonder what Big Ice Cube is doing now. She muttered softly. These words were carried by the night wind to the ears of the people on the roof. Higashio Motetsu's leisurely body was slightly stunned. Then, he snorted in disdain. What's so good about that unromantic ice cube? Is it worth it to talk about it in the middle of the night? When Xuanqi Zimo, who was looking around, heard this, he turned to look at his young master in shock. Young master, why do I smell something sour? It's probably because you haven't bathed for a few days. Stay away from me and don't give me your scent. Higashio Motetsu rolled his eyes at him in disgust. Xuanqi Zimo silently shifted his body, feeling a little wronged. She had just taken a bath last night. Higashio Motetsu looked at the people below and hesitated. It had been a long time since they last met, but he had a feeling of homesickness. The weather is dry, be careful of the candles. A watchman walked slowly down the street. It just so happened that the Cho hour had just passed. He's here. Higashio Motetsu whispered when he heard the change in the night wind. The two of them found a place to hide. Just as the two of them left, 3 black-clothed men landed, and dozens of black-clothed men instantly appeared on the roof of the inn. We've received orders today to capture Chu Qingyan alive, regardless of whether she's injured or disabled, the leader of the black-clothed men said cautiously. What he meant was that as long as she was alive, it didn't matter if she was injured or disabled. After that, the leader of the black-clothed men made a few hand gestures. One of the black-clothed men hung upside down on a golden hook, then took out a small bamboo tube and gently poked it through the curtains, then blew smoke into the room. They planned to knock out the people inside first, then take them away without anyone noticing. About half an hour later, when the person inside had almost fainted, the black-clothed men split into 2 groups and entered through Chu Qingyan's 2 windows. When the leader of the black-clothed men entered the room, he looked around. After confirming that there was nothing out of the ordinary, he headed straight for the bed. However, when he grabbed the corner of the blanket and lifted it, he found only a pillow. He immediately exclaimed, "We've been tricked." As soon as he finished speaking, the sound of a sword slicing through the air rang out in the darkness. With a muffled groan, one of the black-clothed men collapsed. The sword flashed and landed on the swordsman's body. Only then did the black-clothed men clearly see the cold eyes of the red-clothed youth standing by the window. "Chu Qingyan, do you want to come with us yourself, or do you want us to bring you away?" The leader of the black-clothed men raised his hand to signal his men not to act blindly without thinking, but to attempt to communicate with Chu Qingyan. Because the Shaolai cavalry was right beside them, if they were to be alarmed, then it would not be easy to clean up the mess. Hearing that, Chu Qingyan felt that it was funny. "Who are you guys? Whose orders did you receive? Why should I go with you guys?" "Chu Qingyan, don't refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit." "Then let's see if you guys can force me to drink a forfeit. My big ice cube hates me the most when I drink." "Do it." The leader of the black-clothed men immediately ordered. Over 10 black-clothed men immediately brandished their weapons at Chu Qingyan, not allowing her to speak. Chu Qingyan snorted coldly, then placed her sword in front of her, and began to break through their combined attacks. Although at the beginning she relied on her petite body to take care of many people, but she did not expect that these people would continuously jump into the room, it was simply bullying her with numbers. Furthermore, the room was not big, adding on the fact that there were many people on the other side, their swords were all killing moves, and the death warriors did not care about their lives. No matter how many swords you slashed at them, as long as they were still alive, they would bite you and beat you up, so Chu Qingyan was having a hard time fighting. At this time, she had just taken care of a black-clothed man, and an opening appeared behind her. There were people in front of her who were fighting with her, and there were already people behind her who took the opportunity to swing their swords at her. If she were to turn sideways now, she would be able to avoid the fatal attack behind her, but she would not be able to avoid the killing move in front of her. Chu Qingyan's forehead immediately had a few drops of cold sweat. Advancing was death, retreating was also death. At this time, a person suddenly appeared in her mind. If she were to die here tonight, then she would have let him down. He had worked so hard to nurture her until now. In a flash, a folding fan flew in from the window, heavily hitting the long sword behind Chu Qingyan. Chu Qingyan took the opportunity to kick away the black-clothed man in front of her, and flipped over to land by the window. That folding fan flew in a circle in the air, and then flew into a person's hand. Chu Qingyan followed everyone's gaze, and saw that under another window, a deep purple figure was leaning on the table, as if he had no bones, with long hair draped over his shoulders, and on his forehead, there was a purple-silver ornament pendant lying quietly. His appearance was enough to topple cities, and it was impossible to tell if he was a man or a woman. His phoenix eyes were bright, as if he was an enchantress that appeared in the dark night, making people feel fear, but also unable to help but want to approach. Who are you? Don't meddle in other people's business. The leader of the black-clothed men couldn't figure out this person's background, but from his previous move, he could see that this person's cultivation was profound, and if there was a conflict, then it would be detrimental to their plan. He saw that person ignore the leader of the black-clothed men, and walked past him, looking at Chu Qingyan who was behind him. His red lips curved, and his phoenix eyes beamed as he said, "Little girl," he said, "this is meddling in other people's business, what do you think?" At this time, Chu Qingyan was already stunned on the spot. She looked at this seemingly familiar face, and a name flashed in her mind. So in this world, all the meetings were just reunions after being separated for a long time. Chapter 660. At this moment, the door was kicked open. Jean Xian and the others broke into the room. "Master, we're here to protect you." The plan was exposed. The leader of the black-clad men glared at Chu Qingyan fiercely, then waved his hand to give the order, and the black-clad men began to retreat. Su Shiba and the others immediately chased after them. Many people left, and the room suddenly became empty. "Master, we're late." Jean Xian blamed himself. Chu Qingyan put away her sword and wondered, "I remember that there were people living in the 2 rooms next door. How come I didn't hear anything here?" At that time, she didn't delay and directly attacked these black-clad men, just to make a noise to alert them. But she didn't expect that they would be a step later than expected. Jean Xian immediately replied, "Just now, I saw that the brothers in the 2 rooms had been knocked out, and I just happened to bring people to check the horses in the stable, so I was a step late." When Jean Xian mentioned the 2 rooms next door, a certain someone's eyes flashed with a smug light. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but remember that these black-clad men had planned to knock her out and then take her away. Fortunately, she didn't fall asleep just now, and the medicine bag she carried with her could deal with the general knockout smoke, so she could hide safely and wait for an opportunity to take action. "Well, clean up these bodies first." "Yes." After Chu Qingyan gave the order, she sat at the table and made tea alone. The certain someone, who had been ignored, had a flash of embarrassment on his face, but soon he recovered his cynical smile and sat down on the other side of the table. At this time, Jean Xian, who had been paying attention to this person's movements, saw this and blocked in front of him with his sword. Higashio Motetsu glanced at the tip of the sword on his neck, and there was no fear on his face. Instead, he looked at the person who had been ignoring him with an enchanting smile. "Little girl, you really don't recognize me?" Before Chu Qingyan could reply, Jean Xian said coldly, "Young Master Dongting, you deceived my master, and you still dare to show up today. Even if you want to offer your body, it would depend on whether your master wants it or not. Today, I'm just here to be the hero and save the beauty." Higashio Motetsu replied with a smile, but his eyes fell on the person opposite him. As soon as he said that, not only Jean Xian, but even Chu Qingyan choked. Chu Qingyan raised her hand to signal for Jean Xian to withdraw his sword. She then picked up her teacup and slowly sipped her tea. "You can go now." Higashio Motetsu rested his chin on his hand, as if he had been sitting for a long time. "Anyone who comes is a guest. Don't you feel bad about sending me away without inviting me to a cup of tea?" "Why would I feel bad?" "I feel very bad." Chu Qingyan rolled her eyes. 5 years had passed, and this person's skin hadn't thinned at all. Instead, it had thickened quite a bit. Alright, since master doesn't want to entertain me, then I, as the guest, can only do it myself. Higashio Motetsu bluntly took the teapot and poured himself a cup. Seeing this, Chu Qingyan didn't want to argue with him. Otherwise, she would be accused of being stingy. At this time, the room had been cleaned up, so Chu Qingyan had Jin Xian stand guard at the door to prevent anyone from entering. Thus, only Chu Qingyan and Higashio Motetsu were left in the room. The window sill was wide open, and the night breeze blew in. The smell of blood gradually dissipated, but the silence between the two slowly filled the room. Chu Qingyan drank her tea with an indifferent expression, as if there was no one in the room. Higashio Motetsu was originally smiling, but when he felt the alienation from her body, the curve of his lips slowly flattened. Little girl, are you still holding a grudge over what happened in the past? The hand that was drinking tea paused, and Chu Qingyan laughed at herself. How would I dare to hold a grudge? Moreover, it's already been several years, who would still remember that matter? It's just that I didn't see clearly. Hearing this, Higashio Motetsu's phoenix eyes deeply looked at her. Little girl, what happened in the past, I don't have any reason to explain it, but I can guarantee that I never had any thoughts of hurting you. I know, you just want to get what you want from me. Now that you've gotten what you want, why bother to disturb my life? Chu Qingyan's mocking tone became even more intense, but it was more because she felt that it wasn't worth it. After so many years, every time she thought of that matter, she would feel like she had fed her heart to a dog. Little girl, you, Higashio Motetsu, who had always been able to choke people to death with his words, was suddenly at a loss for words. Have you finished practicing the heart-protecting moon? She glanced at him. She suddenly changed the topic, and Higashio Motetsu almost didn't react, almost. Chu Qingyan smiled when she heard this. Then this time, what do you want from me? Or do you want to get something from my highness? The person in front of him had a face full of mockery, making Higashio Motetsu unable to maintain the smile on his face. Little girl, in your eyes, am I such an unscrupulous person? Chu Qingyan didn't answer. Once bitten, twice shy. If it was just the two of them, she wouldn't be so cautious. But since it involved Big Ice Cube, she didn't dare to think in a simple way. Because the person in front of her was the huge Moon Palace sect, the sect that had pursued Big Ice Cube with all their might. Higashio Motetsu took a deep breath, then a helpless smile flashed across his phoenix eyes. Little girl, if I say that I met you on the way here by chance, and followed you because I wanted to see if that person was you, and wanted to leave after confirming that person's identity in Deer City, but found out that you were being watched, so I couldn't help but appear, if I say that, would you believe me? Higashio Motetsu, give me a reason that I can believe. Chu Qingyan met his gaze, her eyes full of probing and suspicion. Higashio Motetsu couldn't help but scoff. Little girl, aren't you making things difficult for me? That's making things difficult for you. Chu Qingyan scoffed. Then you can't stand my consideration. Then you can consider it. Higashio Motetsu went along with her words, raising his eyebrows, revealing a provocative look. Forget it, Jin Xian, send the guest out. Even if he succeeded in his consideration and she believed him, what was the point? She closed her eyes and asked him to leave. You didn't think of believing me, right? Higashio Motetsu slowly got up, placing the teacup in his hand on the table. Without waiting for her reply, he turned and walked towards the door, leaving Chu Qingyan with a lonely back view. Chu Qingyan looked at his departing figure and suddenly felt that it was a little irritating, especially his self-deprecating and sorrowful expression. She scratched her head, feeling that this person was really annoying, but she couldn't get angry at him. At that moment, Higashio Motetsu returned to his room, and Xuanqi Zimo hopped out. Young master, this subordinate has taken care of the matter, but this subordinate doesn't understand why you wanted this subordinate to knock those people out. Higashio Motetsu swept away his self-deprecating and sorrowful expression and waved his paper fan in satisfaction. That's the only way for this highness to make a move at a critical moment. Oh, then have you reconciled with Miss Chu? Xuanqi Zimo asked curiously. That little girl is still angry, but there's still plenty of time for that. His lips hooked into a meaningful smile. Chapter 661. As soon as Higashio Motetsu left the room, Tsushiba and the others had already returned. Tsushiba stepped forward and reported, "Young master, we caught up with those people and fought with them on the bridge in front, but in the end, 3 of them escaped." What about the others? Chu Qingyan knew the strength of these people because she had fought with the men in black before. 10 of them were intercepted and killed. 4 of them were detained, but in the end, they all committed suicide by taking poison, Tsushiba said with some regret. Chu Qingyan nodded, "In fact, I don't expect to get any information from them. Thank you for your hard work. Young master, you're too kind. It's our duty to protect you. But we're curious. Who are these people and why are they targeting you?" Tsushiba asked with a puzzled face. Hearing this, Chu Qingyan shook her head. "I don't know who sent these people, but..." She recalled the men in black she fought tonight. The clothes they wore were bought from the palace, and the stitches were different from the ones in Jiangnan. So she had a vague answer in her heart, they should be from the capital. Jin Xian, Tsushiba, and the others looked at each other in disbelief. Tsushiba asked, "Young master, did you offend someone?" Chu Qingyan shook her head again. "I've never made enemies, so I don't know who wants to kill me." "Since you can't think of anything, young master, you should rest first. We'll take turns guarding you," Jin Xian said. Chu Qingyan smiled, "It's okay. You've worked hard all night. Go and rest. We still have to hurry tomorrow. They won't come again after this one time. Go back to your rooms first." Although everyone agreed, they still tacitly took turns to guard her. Chu Qingyan knew, so she could only let them be. She lay on the bed, and her mind began to work at high speed. In the past few years, she had spent some time studying the characteristics of some famous assassination organizations, especially some of the more special symbols. So she could see that those people were not simply from the capital, but were sent by someone in the palace. But she could not guess who was behind the scenes. Who on earth wanted to capture her? She couldn't figure it out no matter how much she thought about it. The night passed just like that. At dawn, the city gates were already open. The fight last night did not cause too much of an impact, so Chu Qingyan and the others successfully gathered outside the city. At this time, there were few people on the road. Dozens of horses were galloping on the road. Not long after, Su Yi said to Chu Qingyan, "Young master, there are 2 horses following us." Chu Qingyan turned around to look at the 2 people. Although they were in a hurry, it did not affect their enchanting looks. She really believed that some people, even when they were in dire straits, could still live elegantly. Compared to his wrinkled clothes, it was simply infuriating. "Ignore them." Chu Qingyan snorted and focused on hurrying along. Since the young master said so, Su Yi and the others no longer paid attention to the people behind them. "Young master, Miss Chu doesn't seem to want to talk to you." Xuanqi Zimo did not have the foresight to tell the truth, so as soon as he finished speaking, his head was firmly hit by a chestnut. "No one will think you're mute if you don't speak." Higashio Motetsu retracted his fan and said coldly. Xuanqi Zimo immediately sewed his mouth shut, in case his master's fan came smashing down again. At this time, Higashio Motetsu looked at the people in front of him who were galloping on horseback, and his heart surged. Although 5 years had passed and he could still recognize the little girl at a glance, many things had changed over time. For example, her increasingly outstanding appearance, her abilities, and her current personality. To be honest, he really did not have the confidence to obtain her forgiveness. This kind of feeling was really terrible. When the group dismounted and found a place to rest, Lu Guang came over with a letter. "Young master, I just received a letter from master. He said that you have to be more careful on the road. Hearing this, she nodded. It seemed that the big ice cube already knew about the assassination at the inn, so he specially sent a letter. Write a reply and tell His Highness not to worry. I'll rush back as soon as possible. Although she still had a lot to say in her heart, at this time, she could only be concise and comprehensive. Later, she would discuss with him in detail about the assassination sent by the palace. Lu Guang nodded in agreement. When he turned around, he saw a certain person chasing after them. He muttered in his heart, I have to write this Feng Feng butterfly to tell master that I have to protect Miss Chu. Just as Chu Qingyan picked up the dry food to eat, she looked up and saw Higashio Motetsu and his servant standing not far away. To be honest, after not seeing him for a few years, this unruly and devilish young man had lost some of his youthfulness. Now, his appearance was more exquisite and upright, and his body had grown a lot taller. It could be said that he had the capital to make men fall head over heels and women lose their minds. However, the smile in his eyes was more and more unfathomable. But if Chu Qingyan were to describe his changes, she would only say that he was more devilish and more unfathomable. Normally, she would choose to stay away from such people because she felt that she wasn't smart enough. If she was with someone who was too good at scheming, she would be betrayed and still help count the money. So Chu Qingyan retracted her gaze and pretended not to see. Since he wanted to follow her, then so be it. After all, the legs were on his body. As long as he didn't do anything, she didn't care. But as soon as she turned around, someone came forward, but was blocked by Jean Xian. Miss Chu. Xuanqi Zimo looked at her pitifully. She had seen this person before. He was Higashio Motetsu's follower. Chu Qingyan gestured to Jean Xian, and Jean Xian retreated. What's the matter? Xuanqi Zimo turned to look at his young master, then coughed softly and said shyly, Miss Chu, we left in a hurry today and didn't have time to prepare rations. What do you think? Chu Qingyan couldn't help but turn to look at the person standing under the tree. She never thought that he would have a day like this. What does your lack of rations have to do with my master? Jean Xian said coldly. Xuanqi Zimo lowered his head. He knew that his master would always come up with such an idea. However, he would always be the one to lose face. Making a dignified young master of the Moon Gate Palace beg for food. Oh heavens! Just as he was about to retreat, a cold wind blew behind him. He couldn't advance or retreat. Suddenly, a heavenly voice rang out. Jean Xian, take him to get some rations. Xuanqi Zimo was moved to tears. Finally, he didn't have to face his master's attitude. When Higashio Motetsu saw his subordinate return with food, he thought to himself happily. The little girl still couldn't bear to see him like this. It seemed that he could continue to use the trick of injuring himself to gain her sympathy. However, young master, Miss Chu said that this Rujiamo is to repay you for saving her last night. When he heard this, the smile on his face froze. His saving grace was worth only 2 steamed buns. Wasn't that too cheap? Higashio Motetsu suddenly felt that he couldn't eat anymore. Chapter 662. Because they would be able to reach Fuyang in the afternoon, Chu Qingyan let everyone rest for a while and set off in 2 hours. After giving her orders, she strolled in the forest to digest her food. At this time, a figure silently followed her. Higashio Motetsu, do you think this is interesting? Chu Qingyan stood by a small stream and suddenly spoke. Following silently the entire way, she did not know what he wanted to do. The other clear silhouette reflected on the surface of the stream smiled faintly upon hearing this. The ripples of the cold stream immediately sparkled brightly. Interesting, I think this is the most interesting thing that has happened in 4 years. He walked to her side and looked at the clear stream as he spoke in a casual tone. Chu Qingyan felt a headache coming on. Can't you be a bit more serious? So many years have passed, why is he still like this? Could it be that time had only made him grow older, but his temperament had remained the same? If I'm a bit more serious, will you forget about the past? Higashio Motetsu turned around and looked at her directly. His tone was no longer as playful as before and his expression had turned serious. She had always seen him with a playful appearance. It was rare to see such a serious side of him. Chu Qingyan was a bit stunned. Then she turned to look at the stream and spoke in a mocking tone. Even if I forgive you, then what? She was a person who could tolerate anything, but she could not tolerate being deceived and betrayed by someone she trusted. Higashio Motetsu could hear the resistance in her voice. He could not help but turn his eyes and his gaze fell on the grass by the stream. Qing Yan, we have known each other for almost a year. Although we have been apart for 4 years, it has still been 5 years. Although I was wrong in the beginning, we have not seen or contacted each other for 4 years. Could it be that the harm I have caused you cannot be healed? You believe that time can heal everything? That's just a lie. She shook her head and looked at him. Using a very sincere tone, she continued to speak to him, Higashio Motetsu, I'm not angry at you. You don't have to feel guilty anymore. Higashio Motetsu felt that this happiness came too suddenly. Before he could digest it, the next words of the person in front of him shattered all the happiness in an instant. So we will go our separate ways. In the future, we will forget about each other and not disturb each other. Chu Qingyan left these words and turned to leave. Quang Dang. Higashio Motetsu felt as if a bucket of ice water had been poured over his head. He watched as the slender figure slowly left. His eyes seemed to be covered by a thin layer of fog. All along, he had not taken this little lass to heart. Just like when he met her years ago and learned of her identity, he had the intention to make use of her. Later on, he was gradually attracted to her and softened. He had always been used to doing whatever he wanted. Even when his identity was exposed in Shang country and the two of them broke up, it did not cause much of a stir in his heart. He rarely took someone to heart. They were just passers-by. Even if they met again 4 years later, he thought that as long as his tone was better, his attitude was lower, and he just apologized, the little lass would quickly forgive him and the two of them would reconcile. But today, when she seriously told him that they would go their separate ways and would not disturb each other anymore, he suddenly felt that all his previous thoughts were overturned. Suddenly, he did not know what to do. Which one of the people around him did not bow to him, avoid him, or gnash their teeth in anger? He never had the need to curry favor with others. But this little lass was really a headache. Young master, did you get the cold shoulder again? Xuanqi Zimo huffed and puffed as he ate his steamed bun. He silently praised it in his heart. It was really delicious. Next time, he would see if he could learn from Miss Chu and use it as a must-have when he went out. But the prerequisite was that Miss Chu was willing to pay attention to his young master. As soon as he finished speaking, his young master glared at him, and he immediately shut up. Then, he turned around and silently ate his steamed bun. Let's continue on our way. Chu Qingyan ordered as she returned to the group. Mistress, are those two really not going to do anything? Jean Xian looked at the two people behind him warily. Previously, when they were in Shang country, Higashio Motetsu's identity was exposed. He was still brooding about it, so he was worried that this person was up to something again. No need. Chu Qingyan thought that she had already spoken so bluntly just now. He was also a person who cared about his reputation, so he should not continue to pester her. Moreover, she did not think that there was anything for him to pester her about. Perhaps she was just looking for trouble. By the way, have you contacted the bank in Fuyang? Chu Qingyan asked as she got on her horse. Yes, they have sent someone to pick us up at the city gate, Su Shiba immediately replied. Good, let's go. Let's reach Fuyang before the sun sets. Go. The group continued on their way. Jiangnan Su Family Bank. Xiao Su sat in the study, flipping through the account books that Chu Qingyan had Yang Xiaowan organize before she left. Huo Ling stood in front of him with a face full of annoyance. Mistress, This subordinate has failed to live up to your trust for so many years. I did not expect that there would be a mole hiding in the bank and entrusted with such an important task. This caused the bank to lose so much money, and also caused this year's silver to be swapped and a series of events. This subordinate has failed you. Jin Ling knelt down, his voice full of self-blame. Yang Xiaohuan had already shown him these account books, and they were filled with the fake accounts that Shi Qing had been keeping from him for the past few years. Because these accounts were done flawlessly, and because of his trust, no one had discovered it all these years. Jin Ling, do you remember why this prince entrusted the bank and all of its properties to you? Xiao Su closed the account books, his gaze landing on his subordinate as he spoke indifferently. Because this subordinate is more sensitive to numbers and is good at calculating, Jin Ling lowered his head and replied. Wrong, because this prince trusted you. Xiao Su shook his head. This subordinate has failed you. Mistress, please take back this subordinate's authority. He lowered his head even more, his heart full of regret. Why? Xiao Su frowned. This subordinate, Jin Ling felt that he was too ashamed to speak. Shouldn't you make up for your mistakes? Don't tell me you want to run away. Xiao Su raised his brows, pushing the account books on the table forward. He said coldly, I'll give you half a month's time to sort out all the accounts and calculate the amount of losses. Jin Ling was stunned, his eyes watering. He immediately bowed and choked out, this subordinate obeys. You may leave. Xiao Su waved his hand. Yes. Xiao Su looked at Jin Ling's back as he left, his mind replaying the little fellow's words. Everyone makes mistakes. If you give up after making one mistake, it's a little unreasonable. Only those who have fallen and climbed back up will remember more and not make the same mistake again. They will also be more careful and conscientious in their work. They will also be more grateful and loyal. So in the way of managing people, it's more appropriate to forgive than to give up. He realized that his way of doing things was becoming more and more similar to her. Benevolence, this word had never appeared in his life before. But this was pretty good. Chapter 663. They hurried all the way and arrived at Fuyang before sunset. Young Master Chu, I am the manager of the bank, Lu Yi. I have been waiting here for your arrival. A tall, thin, and shrewd-looking man led 4 or 5 servants to welcome them at the city gate. When he saw Chu Qingyan, he immediately bowed. Chu Qingyan dismounted and someone took the reins from her hands. She walked in front of Lu Yi, smiled, and returned the greeting. Thank you for your trouble, Manager Lu. Chu Qingyan is a little embarrassed that you have to personally welcome us. It's my pleasure, Lu Yi said modestly. It's already late. Let's enter the city first. Chu Qingyan did not stand on ceremony and agreed. Thus, the group of people entered the city. Are you also from Jiangnan? A servant asked the 2 people behind them. Xuanqi Zimo was about to shake his head when a folding fan slapped his mouth. A beautiful face leaned forward. That's right. I'm with the young man in red. The servant had never seen such a beautiful person and nodded foolishly. Okay. Please come this way. Chu Qingyan glanced at the 2 people behind her and narrowed her eyes. Jean Xan leaned over. Master, do you want this subordinate to chase them away? There's no hurry. Let's see what they're planning. Since they had followed her for so long, she wanted to see what they wanted from her. With Chu Qingyan's tacit approval, Higashio Motetsu and his servant followed them into the bank without a hitch. As soon as they entered the courtyard, Lu Yi said, everyone must be tired from the long journey. This humble one has already prepared a banquet to welcome everyone. If the reception is not satisfactory, please forgive me, young Master Chu and everyone. Chu Qingyan raised her hand to stop Lu Yi. Manager Lu, you don't have to be so polite. We're leaving for Jiangnan tomorrow, so the banquet can wait until next time. Lu Yi thought of the importance of this temporary transfer and obediently agreed. Then, if young Master Chu has any instructions, please do not hesitate to ask. Steward Lu, please arrange rooms for our brothers to rest in advance. After that, this one needs to have a detailed discussion with Steward Lu about the matter of this secondment, Chu Qingyan replied. All right, the rooms have already been arranged. Let the servants lead them there. Young Master Chu, you can discuss with me in the study. Lu Yi immediately bowed and raised his hand. Young Master Chu, this way please. Thank you. Chu Qingyan bowed slightly and followed him to the study. When they arrived at the study, Chu Qingyan went straight to the point. Steward Lu, what do you think of this secondment? Lu Yi originally thought that this young man from Jiangnan would exchange a few pleasantries with him, but he didn't expect him to be so straightforward. However, he had met all kinds of people and hid his emotions well. He thought for a moment before choosing his words carefully. Recently, many things have happened in Jiangnan's private bank. This one feels that it's not appropriate to be seconded at this time. However, if the transaction is successful, it will be a huge profit for the private bank. Therefore, this one did not participate in this matter, so it's not appropriate for me to make too many comments. Chu Qingyan nodded in her heart. She had her reasons for asking Lu Yi directly just now. She wanted to use this method to directly see Lu Yi's reaction. As expected of a businessman, his words were quite smooth. However, he also gave his own opinion and didn't blindly follow others. Moreover, she heard from Jean Ling that this person was quite capable and efficient. For so many years, Fuyang's Su family bank had been handed over to him without any problems. Chu Qingyan was also relieved. She raised her hand and directly revealed the golden token in her hand. Lu Yi, I need your cooperation. When Lu Yi saw the token that belonged exclusively to his master appear in the hands of the young man in front of him, he was slightly startled. However, his body reacted first and he knelt down. Please give me your orders, young Master Chu. Although he didn't know why the golden token appeared in the hands of this young man, when Jinling University sent the letter over, the words revealed that this young man's identity was noble and asked him to cooperate well. Therefore, he didn't think much of it and acted as if he was at her disposal. Chu Qingyan put away the golden token and solemnly explained the next step. The study was brightly lit. Jean Xin and the others were stationed outside, so no one could spy on them. The people from Jiangnan's Su family bank have already arrived in Fuyang. We should still act according to the plan and ambush them on their way back. If we can successfully intercept this silver, then Master's next plan can be realized one by one. I don't believe that we can't destroy all of the King of England's businesses. That's right. Who hasn't always praised Xiao Lychee like a flower? This time, let's slap their faces properly. Let's see if they still dare to laugh. This time, it's going to be fun. Two men dressed in civilian clothes were hiding in the alley in front of the Su family bank. When they saw Chu Qingyan and the others enter the door, they laughed and talked with contempt. Meanwhile, in Jiangnan, Huo Ling hurriedly ran into the study. What's the matter? Is there a dog chasing you outside? Xiao Su was flipping through the book in his hand. When he saw Huo Ling, he was in a good mood and ridiculed him. Huo Ling took a deep breath and said with a sad expression, Master, don't gloat. Guess who's here? Receiving the complaining expression of his subordinate, Xiao Su looked calm. If you keep me in suspense, I'll let Jinling release the dog. Huo Ling's expression became more sad. If the little princess said this, Master would definitely cooperate. But when it came to him, it became this treatment. Master's heart was getting more and more biased. Master, it's your father-in-law. Huo Ling snorted. Old Master Chu is here, but the little princess is not. Master, you just have to bear with it. Unfortunately, Huo Ling forgot that Papa Chu was here. The real doomsday was not his master, but them. Xiao Su's fingers paused. He didn't expect that they would come so quickly. During the time in Jiangnan, although the little fellow didn't say it, he knew that she missed her parents very much. So, he asked Turan to send someone to invite them over. Originally, he wanted to give her a surprise, so he didn't agree to let her be the leader. But she insisted on going, so he followed her decision. But he still put down the book, got up, and planned to go outside the door to greet them. Where are they now? Hualing was stunned when he saw this. This was the first time that Master went to greet people in person. He stuttered, Turan has already led them to the reception hall. Fortunately, he ran quickly just now. Otherwise, he would be the one in charge of greeting them. Turan would probably be tortured by old Master Chu at this time. Yes, tell the kitchen to prepare a welcome banquet. As for the dishes, you can decide. Xiao Su left this sentence and strode away, leaving Hualing withered in the wind. How could this subordinate know what old Master Chu and old Madam Chu like to eat? Master, aren't you making things difficult for this subordinate? If I knew, I would have gone to greet them. Chapter 664. By the time Chu Qingyan finished her conversation with Lu Yi and walked out of the study, the sky had already darkened. She followed the servant who led the way into her room. At this moment, she was still thinking about what might happen the next day. The moment she closed the door, she discreetly placed her hand on her waist and gripped the hilt of her sword. She looked in a certain direction and said in a low voice, "Who's there?" Just as she finished speaking, the room suddenly lit up. Chu Qingyan was not used to the sudden brightness and could not help but squint her eyes. She saw a figure leaning against a pillar, looking at her hand movements with a smile. "You're quite alert." When she saw who it was, Chu Qingyan sheathed her sword. Her expression did not change much. She walked into the room and sat down. She poured herself a cup of hot tea and looked at him calmly. "Don't you feel embarrassed that the Moon Palace's young master barged into someone else's room at night?" Higashio Motetsu chuckled and sat down in front of her. He rested his chin on one hand and looked completely unconcerned. "The Moon Palace will be embarrassed, not me. Besides, I'm here to visit a friend. Don't put such a big label on me. You speak as if I'm your friend." Chu Qingyan did not give him any face. Higashio Motetsu shrugged and asked, "Say whatever you want. But aren't you going to ask me why I'm here?" Chu Qingyan raised her brows. "Dare I ask, young palace master, what brings you to my humble abode?" He automatically ignored the mockery in her words. He raised his other hand and a bag appeared in front of her. "I brought this for you when I went out for a stroll tonight." He pushed the bag forward. "I know you haven't eaten anything tonight. Eat it while it's hot." With that, he stood up and prepared to leave. Chu Qingyan looked at the bag that was still steaming, and an inexplicable emotion surged in her chest. "Higashio Motetsu." As soon as she said that, Higashio Motetsu stopped in his tracks. He turned back to look at her, his face still looking cynical. "You're worried that I'll poison you?" "It's okay, I can try it for you." Chu Qingyan shook her head and looked at him with a complicated expression. "You've been following me all this time. What's your motive?" She had already said what she needed to say during the day. Unfortunately, it was as if he hadn't heard her and was reluctant to part with her. She had originally intended to treat him coldly, but when he appeared in front of her again and again, she felt that such a big person was an eyesore even if she treated him as a block of wood. Coupled with his actions tonight, Chu Qingyan felt a headache coming on. Since that was the case, she might as well tell him frankly. "I don't have any motive," Higashio Motetsu said with a smile in his eyes. Chu Qingyan didn't believe him. No one will be good to someone for no reason. "Higashio Motetsu, you have a criminal record. Based on what you've done before, I can let Shaolai cavalry chase you out. But because of our previous relationship, I've turned a blind eye to your actions for the past few days. I don't care what your motive is, but this time I have a mission. I hope you won't disturb me when I'm doing my business, otherwise don't blame me for falling out with you. For that ice-cold stone of yours." Higashio Motetsu's focus wasn't on the ultimatum she had given him. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but frown. She was talking about business with him. Where did he go? I'm talking about business with you. That's right, business. I'm curious, why are you always doing things for Xiaosu? Can't you have something of your own to do? Higashio Motetsu thought about how she had always been thinking for Xiaosu 4 years ago, and his heart felt uncomfortable. He snorted and spoke up for her, you're not even his subordinate. Are you willing to be ordered around by him? Chu Qingyan's head was full of black lines, what's this and what's this? His Highness didn't force me, everything was voluntary. You're saying it as if I don't have any opinions at all. Isn't that the case? When Higashio Motetsu heard her call Xiaosu so intimately, his heart became angry. After not seeing you for so many years, I thought you'd have improved a little, but I didn't expect you to still be so stupid. Do you know how to chat? Chu Qingyan didn't have the mood to continue talking with him, and waved her hand to send him away. Forget it, I'm not talking to you anymore. Humph. Higashio Motetsu stormed off in a huff. When Chu Qingyan saw him deflated, she couldn't help but want to laugh. However, when she opened the paper bag and took out the deep-fried dough cake wrapped in oil paper, she suddenly felt a little upset. She remembered that she had only mentioned to him once that she liked to eat crispy deep-fried dough cakes. She didn't expect him to remember. She closed her eyes. If it weren't for what happened back then, she might have been friends with him. He was the first friend she had made when she first came to this world. What a pity, her eyes reddened. Many times, she couldn't help herself because of the gap in front of her. In the courtyard of the Jiangnan Bank, there was a big table. This was in accordance with Father Chu's request. He said that he wanted to sing while drinking wine, recite poetry to the moon, and admire flowers under the moon. Xiaosu, Father Chu, and Mother Chu were sitting at the dining table. They hadn't seen each other for a few months, and Father Chu was nagging beside his son-in-law. Chucking onions, you don't know. Without you and Kai Kai in the house, there's no life at all. Blockhead is silly and always does things by himself. Xining, that silly girl, is always busy. They don't play with me. Daddy is so bored. Fortunately, Little Annoyance gave birth and gave Daddy company. Little Annoyance is very smart, much smarter than Blockhead. Oh right, son-in-law, Daddy brought them over. Look, aren't they very cute? After saying this, Father Chu said to Huling, who was standing beside him, White Impermanence, quickly bring Little Annoyance and her family over. Huling subconsciously took a step back and begged for mercy, Old Master, let Black Impermanence go. This subordinate is afraid. Turin choked. When did he admit that he was called Black Impermanence? No ambition. Go, go, go. I'll let you go and train your courage. Little Annoyance isn't fierce at all. Be good. Father Chu glared at him and urged him to go. The corner of Huling's mouth twitched. Are you sure that guy isn't fierce? Huling used his eyes to ask his master for help, but who knew that his master would directly ignore him? In the end, his request failed, and he could only bitterly leave. Father Chu happily chewed on a drumstick. Mother Chu could only shake her head and smile when she saw this scene. Only her son-in-law's subordinate could let Yuan Lang need him like this. However, she could also see that her son-in-law doted on her daughter. After eating a drumstick, Father Chu glanced at the person beside him who was peacefully drinking wine and suddenly said, Son-in-law, Kai Kai will be of marriageable age in a few months. I know. Xiaosu didn't understand and replied indifferently. This answer made Father Chu unhappy. He slapped the table heavily and snorted, Little brat, you've become bold. Do you not want to be responsible for Kai Kai and want to trick her into marriage? Chapter 665. Are you trying to trick me into marrying you? Mr. Chu's voice was loud and clear. His face was full of disappointment, as if he had been cheated of a few pieces of cake. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone was stunned. Especially Xiao Su. He had just picked up a meatball, and because of his shock, he slipped and bounced a few times on the table, fell to the ground, and rolled a few times before finally coming to a stop. Just like Xiao Su's mood at the moment, it was fluctuating and tumbling, but it was suppressed by his strong self-control. Did you misunderstand something? It was the first time he had lost his composure at the dinner table, but Xiao Su was very calm. However, no one noticed the slight fluctuation in his eyes. Misunderstanding? Mr. Chu was furious. What misunderstanding? What misunderstanding could there be? Xiao Su was silent. Mr. Chu's words were as if he had not said anything. Mrs. Chu also did not expect her husband to be so angry at her son-in-law. She wanted to hold him back, but unexpectedly, he had already slumped his shoulders and turned his body away in loneliness and sadness. My Kai Kai is so obedient, kind, beautiful, dignified, virtuous, and cute. You actually don't intend to marry her. No, you have already brought her home, but you don't want to marry her and give her an official status. Father asked you a question just now, but you didn't say anything. Aren't you bullying my Kai Kai? Irresponsible, bad guy. Mr. Chu lamented. Xiao Su did not expect that. He opened his mouth, but did not know how to refute. Because, it seemed that Mr. Chu was right. He could not find a single reason to refute. Turin was shocked. Mr. Chu actually said everyone's thoughts so directly. Although it was not very kind to say this to his master, he had to say it. Well done. At this moment, Father Chu continued to reprimand her. Kai Kai is of marriageable age, which means that you're really 15 years old. Usually, when a girl reaches marriageable age, it means that she can talk about marriage and find a husband. However, our Kai Kai is a little special. She was betrothed to you by the retired emperor a long time ago. As your father, I was very assured because I thought that you were very reliable. You are not even reliable. Are you still not ready to marry Kai Kai? How long are you going to drag this out? What if some good seedlings appear and try to snatch them from you? Won't you be worried? Although Kai Kai's personality was like mine and she was very determined, what if the seedling was better than you? Although no one can compare to you in father's eyes, Kai Kai might not think the same way. Why are you so stupid? At this point, Mr. Chu's face was filled with resentment, as if he was lecturing his useless son. Everyone suddenly felt that something was amiss. Wasn't Chu Machen's father speaking out for the young princess consort? Why did she suddenly start to worry for her master? I can't help but wonder if this little princess is really your biological daughter. At this moment, the questions came one after another, and Xiao Su's mind went blank. Because he had never thought about these questions before. He was going to marry the little fellow. The Shaolai cavalry at the side silently retreated a few steps. Although their master was being scolded, as subordinates, they should rush forward to help their master. But for some reason, they just wanted to laugh. That was a rare occurrence in decades. I'm sorry, master. In order not to let you hear the laughter, the subordinates very considerately retreated. Chu Machen's mother didn't know whether she should stop him or not. Although her husband's words were her heartfelt thoughts, she felt that there was something wrong with them. It's not what you think. Under Chu Machen's piercing gaze, Xiao Su actually felt a little uncomfortable. Then what is it? Chu Machen's father crossed his arms, looking like he was all ears. Xiao Su was at a loss for words. Because he didn't know what he was thinking in his heart. All the problems tonight were beyond his expectations and beyond the scope of the reasons he could give. Chu Machen's father saw him like this and became angry. Look at you, you're not young anymore. At your age, other people's children are already enough to buy soy sauce. Why don't you have any awareness at all? Look, Shaonuan has already given birth to 3 babies. Hualing just happened to come over with a big white ball and 3 small white balls. Chu Machen's father immediately pointed at the 4 for him to see. Xiao Su looked at the big one and 3 small ones with a hint of surprise in his eyes. These were rare snow wolves, and their fur was so pure that it was even rarer. Considering the fierce nature of snow wolves, Xiao Su was about to ask someone to separate them when Chu Machen's father said, "Xiao Fan, come over here, let my son-in-law see your cubs." Xiao Fan seemed a little unhappy when he heard this name. At this time, there was a meatball lying quietly on the corner of the table. He went forward and patted it with his claws, and the meatball was cut into 3 pieces by his sharp claws. Then, the 3 little troublemakers ran over, each holding a piece and eating happily. Chu Machen's father touched his nose in response to Xiao Fan's indifference and said, "Xiao Fan must dislike you, so he doesn't want to get close to you." The corners of Xiao Su's eyes twitched. How could this work? "Anyway, I don't care, you have to give me a grandson next year. Otherwise, I'll cry in front of you." Chu Machen's father glared at his son-in-law, looking very wronged. Chu Machen's mother tugged at his sleeve and reminded him in a low voice, "It's your grandson." "Yes, my grandson, anyway, I'm going to be a grandfather." Chu Machen's father raised his head. Chu Machen's mother coughed. "It's your grandfather." Chu Machen's father had nothing to lose. "I don't care what you're going to be, but you can't be irresponsible after eating. Otherwise, I'll beat you to death." When Chu Machen's father said this, everyone didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Xiao Su couldn't help but smile as well. But after laughing, his heart felt a little heavy. After dinner, Chu Machen's parents left the table. On the way back, Chu Machen's mother was worried about her husband's mood, but to her surprise, he was humming a song and seemed to be in a good mood. "Dan Yang, did I do a good job just now?" Chu Machen's mother was stunned. "You were acting just now?" Yes. Chu Machen's father lowered his head and said to the big group behind him, "Little guys, I'm going to have a big fat grandson next year. Don't be so smug." Xiao Fan raised his head high, looking at these stupid human beings with disdain. Chu Machen's father turned his head and snorted angrily. Chu Machen's mother was a little confused. Could it be that Yuan Lang urged His Highness to give birth to a child for him to play with because Xiao Fan always protected the 3 little ones and didn't let him play with them? If so, it would be quite unfair to His Highness. In the empty courtyard, Xiao Su was left drinking alone under the moonlight. The others were dismissed by him. At this moment, he was in a bad mood, and he didn't want to show this side of himself in front of his subordinates. Because tonight, Chu Machen's father's question hit him straight in the heart. He had always been rational and had planned every step of his life. He had included the little fellow in his life and made it a part of his life, but he had neglected the most important point. And this point happened to be brought up by Chu Machen's father tonight. In what capacity would the little one continue to participate in his life? Chapter 666. It was a question that he had never thought of, but now it was so obvious in front of him. The little girl must be in his life plan. But what identity should she use to continue living in his future life? Father Chu was right. The little girl had grown up and was going to marry and have children. He had always neglected this point. It turned out that what he thought was simply accompanying her was not going to work at this moment. He suddenly realized that he was so stupid and selfish. He was used to controlling his own life, so he conveniently planned her life. He never asked for her opinion, so when everything was dissected, she was so helpless. It could be said that this feeling was so confusing and even infuriating. At this time, he took the little girl's identity seriously. She was the princess that his grandfather married to him. She was his lifelong companion. Perhaps it was because the two of them had met at the wrong time, so he had always treated her as a child. Even though 4 years had passed, she was still a child in his eyes. So, marrying the little girl and becoming his wife was something that he had never thought of. But from today on, he could not avoid this problem. Otherwise, it would be unfair to the little girl. When Xiao Su drank a cup of wine, Turan quickly walked into the yard. Master, the carrier pigeon followed by the carrier bee has found its whereabouts. It's Prince Yi's mansion in the capital. He stopped pouring wine and then continued to fill it. Xiao Su put down the wine pot with a cold look. 3 years ago, the third brother moved out of the palace and was given a Prince Yi's mansion by his father. Master, the third prince framed you back then, causing you to leave the capital. Now that you have not participated in court politics for many years, why is he still targeting you? Even someone as steady as Tu Ling felt a wave of anger rise in his heart. Although there was no evidence of the assassination attempt on the fourth prince, they all knew that it was a trap set up by the third prince. However, their master was still concerned about their brotherly relationship. In addition, their master was bitterly disappointed in His Majesty, so they did not expose him. However, after so many years, their master had gradually faded out of the circle of princes. Why was the third prince still unwilling to let him go? The valiant cavalry could not take this lying down. Xiao Su held the cup in his hand and slightly raised the corner of his mouth, showing a touch of mockery. It's nothing more than power. Because of her power, Empress Mother ignored his wishes and made a move on Qing Yan. Because of his power, his third brother had repeatedly attacked him. Master, are we going to let the third prince plot against us? Since the third prince had planted spies in the bank many years ago and has been advancing step by step, it proves that he has long wanted to make a move on you. Thinking about the losses of the bank and Jean Ling's anxious look, Turin's tone was a little indignant. I won't let it go so easily, Xiao Su said calmly. In the outside world, everyone said that his third brother was gentle, refined, and intelligent. It was a pity that he was weak and sickly since he was young, and would not live past 30 years old. However, only he knew that it was all just a smokescreen. His third brother had an ambition that did not lose out to others. If it weren't for the plot 4 years ago, he probably wouldn't have noticed the viciousness hidden under the gentle face so quickly. Let Water Spirit investigate his private businesses. I don't need to tell you what to do next. When Xiao Su's words fell, Turin's face revealed a happy smile. Although they couldn't shake the third prince's position, the businesses under his name, as long as Master said a word, their fierce cavalry wouldn't be afraid of collapsing. This subordinate understands. After this matter was said, Huo Ling also walked up. Master, Lu Guang sent a letter. And, read it, Xiao Su said casually. Huo Ling looked at the letter in his hand and hesitated. Master, this subordinate feels that it's better for you to read this letter yourself. After saying this, Huo Ling shrunk his neck. Xiao Su glanced at him, making Huo Ling lower his head. Give it to me. Huo Ling immediately handed it over. Xiao Su opened the letter. At the beginning, it said that they were safe. There was nothing special, but when he read to the end, his eyes unconsciously narrowed. Then, the fire spirit and the earth spirit felt a gust of cold air gradually rising. Sure enough, little princess, this subordinate blesses you in spirit. The next day, Chu Qingyan took Su Yi and the others out of Fuyang City according to the original plan. This time, they carried more than a dozen chests filled with silver and slowed down their speed to go back in the direction they came from. Everyone was dressed as an escort company. This way, they wouldn't attract attention even if they had a large number of people. After leaving Fuyang City, they traveled for half a day without a hitch. Chu Qingyan raised her hand. Let's rest first. We'll continue after half an hour. Yes. Everyone dismounted from their horses. Su Yi arranged for several people to take turns to guard the carriage filled with silver. The few of them gathered together. Young master, this subordinate has been more careful along the way, but we didn't find anyone suspicious. Su Shiba whispered. We're still on the official road now. The probability of thieves appearing is not high. By the way, when did you rob the last 2 times? Chu Qingyan twisted open the water skin and took a sip before asking. Su Shiba seemed to understand something. It was at night. Yes. At our speed, it will take us 3 days to reach Jiangnan. So these 2 nights, everyone must be on high alert and take turns to guard. After Chu Qingyan finished speaking, she subconsciously looked behind her. Higashio Motetsu and his servant were no longer there. They didn't stay in the bank last night. Instead, they quietly left. They came suddenly and left quietly. Chu Qingyan twisted the lid and smiled faintly. Perhaps he was hurt by what she said last night. How could a person who cared so much about their reputation endure it? Moreover, she and he might just be playmates for a while. People of different paths couldn't make plans together. After resting, everyone continued on their journey. On the first night, they were safe and sound. On the second day, they continued on their journey until the evening without any accidents. A fire was lit in the forest, and the light illuminated the surroundings. Su Shiba and his men came back from hunting. Lu Guang and others began to roast the food skillfully. The other people on duty were fooling around, looking relaxed and lazy. Chu Qingyan leaned against a tree trunk, biting a piece of grass in her mouth. Her eyebrows were lowered as if she was resting, but in fact, her ears were listening to the surroundings. Night was the time when people were most relaxed. After 2 days of high vigilance and hurrying on the road, everyone had exhausted a lot of energy. So tonight should be the time when everyone was most tired. It seemed that these people were not stupid and knew how to use psychological tactics. But they were not stupid either. Everything was ready. They just needed to wait for these people to walk into the trap. As soon as she thought of this, she heard rustling footsteps approaching slowly. Chu Qingyan curled her lips slightly. Here they come. Chapter 667. The fire was sizzling. The aroma of wine and meat drifted through the forest with the evening breeze. The atmosphere was relaxed and carefree. At this moment, dozens of men in black surrounded them from all sides. Hand over the silver and we'll let you live. One of the men in black said loudly. Chu Qingyan stood up straight and patted the dust off her body. She looked a little playful. You're finally here. The men in black looked at each other. One of them said, it seems that you want to do this the hard way. We have some fine wine here. Would you like a jug as a reward? As soon as he finished speaking, the jug in Su 18's hand flew out and smashed at the person who spoke. The force of the jug was hidden. The man in black was caught off guard and was hit in the chest. He spat out a mouthful of blood. This move was undoubtedly a declaration of war. Attack! The men in black started to fight. Chu Qingyan looked at the men who were fighting and turned to ask Su Yi, can you recognize them? The voices of the two men who spoke just now are very familiar. And the martial arts of these men are very similar to those of the previous two groups. Su Yi observed for a while and replied. Chu Qingyan saw that he was rubbing his palms together and couldn't help but laugh. Go on. Get back at me for the 2 times I humiliated you before, with interest. Yes. Su Yi was like a runaway wild horse. He immediately drew his sword and joined the fight. Under the light of the fire, Chu Qingyan sized up these black-robed men. Their martial arts were not weak, or rather, they were not inferior to Xiao Lai Qi. It was no wonder that Su Yi and the others were defeated by them. However, this battle could also be used to test if Su Yi and the others had regained their martial arts. Soon, the men in black approached the boxes. When they opened them, they found that they were not filled with silver but stones. We've been tricked. Let's go. Chu Qingyan snorted. You want to leave? It's not that easy. She pulled out her sword and lightly tapped her toes. Using the force of the tree trunk, she flipped over and landed in front of the outermost black-clothed men, blocking their path. Tell me honestly, who sent you? Chu Qingyan held her sword in front of her chest and swept her gaze across these people as she asked coldly. If you want to know, go ask the King of Hell. Several people rushed up, surrounded Chu Qingyan, and began to attack. In the past few years of training, whether it was internal energy or martial arts, they had made great progress. Therefore, these people were unable to gain an advantage over Chu Qingyan. She thought that this gigolo would be easy to deal with, but she didn't expect him to be even more difficult to deal with. Seeing that most of their brothers had already been dealt with, these people started to panic. This was all a scheme. They had to immediately go back and report to their master and make preparations. When one of them was sent flying by Chu Qingyan and fell to the ground, he used his hands to support himself as he climbed up. He hatefully looked at Chu Qingyan and then took out a small fist-sized object. He aimed it at Chu Qingyan's direction and prepared to press down on a protruding object. Go to hell. When that object flashed white under the light of the fire, Jean Xian cried out in alarm. His master, who was fighting with the black-clothed men, did not notice this danger at all. Just at this moment, a purple figure descended from the sky. The moment that object was pressed down, he made his move. A stone flew towards the black-clothed man's wrist. The black-clothed man groaned and the object slipped from his hand. But when everyone heard a "pada" sound, they knew that the switch had been turned on. The moment it landed on the ground, the black ball suddenly exploded and over 10 silver needles flew out in all directions. Seeing this, Chu Qingyan quickly pulled down the cloak on his body. Like a spinning plate, he knocked all the silver needles to the ground. At the same time, he shouted to Xiao Lai Qi, "Dodge." With that, everyone immediately raised their swords to dodge the hidden weapon. That thing did not seem to be completely turned on. It only shot out one round and then stopped. As for the black-clothed men, they had already been hit and turned into porcupines. Only then did Chu Qingyan stop in her tracks. She threw the tattered cloak in her hands onto the ground and said, "Check if there are any survivors." "Young master, no one has any breath left." Su Yi immediately reported after checking. "How many did we lose?" Chu Qingyan glanced at his men and asked. 2 heavily injured and 11 lightly injured. No one was sacrificed. Su Yi said again. Chu Qingyan then heaved a sigh of relief. These people must have underestimated them because it was too easy for them the first 2 times. As a result, they were not prepared and were quickly taken care of by them. Indeed, being arrogant brings losses, while being humble benefits. So she ordered, "Lu Guang, bring some men to clean up the area. Jean Xian, send some men to stand guard. Su Yi, take care of the injured." "Yes." The 3 of them immediately accepted the order and left. When everyone was doing their own things in an orderly manner, Chu Qingyan then turned to look at the person leaning against the tree trunk. Then, without saying anything, she walked into the forest in front. Seeing this, Higashio Motetsu also followed. In the depths of the forest, Chu Qingyan stopped and turned back to look at him. He stopped 3 steps away from her and looked at her with a puzzled gaze. The person in front of him had a devilishly handsome appearance. When he was serious, he was like a jade tree. When he was teasing people, he was frivolous. When he was innocent, he looked easy to bully, but he was actually a sly fox. Sometimes, Chu Qingyan really felt that she could not see through this person. For example, when he saved her just now. "Let me ask you, why did you save me?" Her gaze was locked on him, trying to find some clues from his expression. Higashio Motetsu smiled, "I wanted to save you, so I saved you. There's no reason." Chu Qingyan narrowed her eyes, obviously not very satisfied with his answer. "Dongting, I'll ask you one last time. What is your motive for approaching me this time?" "There's no motive. If you believe me, then believe me. If you don't believe me, then I can't do anything about it." Higashio Motetsu also stopped smiling and looked at her with a sincere gaze. Even though his words were casual, the anticipation in his tone could not be concealed. Chu Qingyan pursed her lips. The night breeze blew past the 2 of them, ruffling the corners of their crimson robes and their dark purple tassels. She suddenly remembered everything from the past. She had always been angry at him for lying to her, but after saving her twice, the resentment that had accumulated over the years seemed to have dissipated a lot. Some things gradually became clear in front of her eyes. When she had a high fever, if he had not sent her to the door of the medical center, perhaps she would have already died. The big ice cube's life was hanging by a thread, but he sent her away without telling her. If he had not told her, perhaps she and the big ice cube would have been separated forever. Also, the whereabouts of the last two herbs, he had brought her to the Blue Manor to dig up the information. She looked at him deeply, and he looked back at her with a calm expression. There were faint traces of a smile in the corners of his eyes. Sometimes, when someone gave a rose, the fragrance would not last long, but the scar that was given would always be remembered in the heart. Chapter 668. In the silent atmosphere, Higashio Motetsu couldn't help but curl his lips. His smile seemed a little distant. Back then, when the Moon Palace wanted to deal with Xiao Su, I didn't know. The order of death wasn't my intention either. But I admit, when I heard the news, I chose to watch from the sidelines. Chu Qingyan didn't expect him to bring up the past. She didn't respond, but looked at him quietly. As if he wasn't trying to get Chu Qingyan's response, Higashio Motetsu continued to speak. The heart-protecting moon is a technique that I've been practicing since I was young. 5 years ago, I had already reached the last level. But because the last level of the technique was missing, my inner energy couldn't break through. So I began to search for it. In the end, I found out that it was in Xiao Su's hands. That was why we had such an unpleasant first meeting in the imperial residence. The second time we met, I discovered your identity. That was why I approached you with a motive. But in the end, I truly thought of you as a friend. He had once thought of using her to threaten Xiao Su. The opportunity was presented to him again and again. But in the end, he gave up. Because he couldn't bear it. He was afraid that the result would be something he didn't want to see. Hearing Higashio Motetsu's words, memories of the past flashed before her eyes. She had to admit that his words had moved her. Actually, it was a bit far-fetched to say that Higashio Motetsu used her. Because he never used her to achieve his own goals. Instead, he helped her many times. It was just that their positions. Who is standing behind the Moon Palace? She narrowed her eyes and looked at him with a sharp gaze. She had to know who was the one who wanted to kill Big Ice Cube. When their eyes met, Higashio Motetsu understood what she wanted to know. It was none other than who was against Xiao Su. I can't answer that question. If he could, he didn't want the Moon Palace to become her subordinate. Unfortunately, this was not something he could control. However, I promise you that I will not approach you with any ulterior motives, nor will I use you. Xiao Su is Xiao Su, you are you, and I am me. Let's just be a pair of pure best friends, okay? What he meant was, don't keep thinking about Xiao Su and give him a chance. The sharpness in his eyes shattered and slowly dissipated. After an unknown amount of time, Chu Qingyan turned her body slightly and looked into the dark depths of the forest. There was a hint of helplessness and compromise in his voice. Dong Ting, this is the last time I trust you. I hope you won't disappoint me again. Higashio Motetsu couldn't believe his ears. He was a little stunned, so the usually calm person actually showed a funny expression at this time. You mean to say that you don't care about what happened in the past? His voice fluctuated with excitement, but he deliberately suppressed it. Chu Qingyan could tell what he was feeling, and she could not help but smile. You're right. We'll be pure best friends, as long as you don't lie to me again. The depression from back then had long dissipated. It was just that the person who was unwilling to be treated seriously by her would repay her like this. When Higashio Motetsu heard this, he revealed a sincere smile. Little girl, I knew that you wouldn't be so heartless. After saying that, his hand landed on her head, and then he rubbed it a few times, until her hair became a bird's nest. Chu Qingyan slapped him. Her previous seriousness had already disappeared, and now she said in a flustered and exasperated manner, "Why are you getting touchy? Show some respect to your older sister." Also, do you know how to use idioms? If you don't know how to use them, go back and study for a few years. Who gave you the guts to actually talk to this highness like that? Although his words were threatening, it couldn't hide the smile in his eyes. Chu Qingyan jumped away from him, so as to avoid being attacked by him again. She raised her hand to stroke her hair while saying in a bad mood, "Who gave you the guts to actually talk to this young master like that? Also, don't smile so devilishly." "What? Are you afraid of being mesmerized by this highness' magnificence?" As he said that, Higashio Motetsu even shamelessly got closer to her. Chu Qingyan rolled her eyes. "You're so boring." Higashio Motetsu raised his eyebrows. "I'm happy. I still have to hurry on my journey tomorrow." "Where are you going?" She looked like she was saying, "Go where you want to be." Higashio Motetsu revealed a teasing expression. "Wherever you go, I'll go with you. Can't you speak properly?" Chu Qingyan held her forehead helplessly. She had a feeling of regret. This person was really crazy. "I don't have much to do recently. Why don't I follow you to Jiangnan to have some fun?" Higashio Motetsu smiled. He originally came out to have some leisure time and happened to meet this little girl. This trip was not in vain. Chu Qingyan nodded. "That's fine. Let's go." The two walked in the direction of the bonfire. As they walked, they talked about each other's missing 4 years of life. Although Jin Xian was a little surprised by Higashio Motetsu's appearance, he didn't say anything when he thought of his help just now and how his master didn't mind. On the other hand, Flowing Light felt a little indignant when he saw such an outstanding man beside his little princess. "Flowing Light, who is that person? Why is he always following young Master Chu?" Su 18 walked to Flowing Light with a water bag in her hand and asked curiously. Flowing Light said angrily, "He's someone who wants to poach." Several question marks appeared on top of Su 18's head. "No, I have to write a letter to tell my master." 18, where's the carrier pigeon?" Flowing Light touched his head and immediately jumped up. "Oh, it's with 11. Although Flowing Light was confused, Su 18 still pointed him in the direction. After Flowing Light left, Su 18 turned to look at the person sitting by the bonfire. She was dressed in red and had black hair. She was graceful but had a humble heart. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes today, they wouldn't have believed that such a small body could have such explosive power. She was able to fight against 7 people alone and not be at a disadvantage. Thinking of the provocation they used to give her, it seemed that they were really overestimating themselves. Su 18 withdrew her gaze and found that Su Yi and the others were also looking at young Master Chu with admiration. It turned out that she wasn't the only one who had such thoughts. Chu Qingyan was talking with Higashio Motetsu. This group of unruly Jiangnan fierce cavalry had already expressed their silent submission to her. The night breeze blew, and the bonfire sizzled. The night was very quiet and peaceful. For Chu Qingyan, a lot of things could basically come to an end. They passed the night peacefully. When they woke up the next day, they set off for Jiangnan in high spirits. Without the burden of those boxes, they immediately quickened their pace. When it was close to noon, they had arrived in Jiangnan. Everyone was in high spirits. After entering the city, Chu Qingyan was about to go to the bank. But when she glanced at the crowd, she suddenly saw a figure. She immediately pulled the reins and stopped. Chapter 669. After resolving the bank's crisis, Chu Qingyan thought of many things on the road. For example, Big Ice's industry. The bank's accounts were falsified, and this year, the bank lost a lot of money due to people's schemes. The Fuli mountain range needed money to forge weapons, and the industry needed money to support it. Thinking about it, there seemed to be many places that needed money urgently. She remembered that when she came to Jiangnan, she had planned to start a business in Jiangnan, but because of the bank, she put it aside. Now, She had to rearrange it into her future plans. Just as she thought of the information she had people gather about Jiangnan's industries, her eyes fell on the Hua family, who was involved in all kinds of industries. If she could cooperate with this person, it would be of great help in opening the market for her products. As she thought of this, she saw Hua Xiaoli walking among the crowd. Without thinking much, she dismounted from her horse and handed the reins to Lu Guang, instructing, "You guys go back and report first." "That's right. You must firmly control Shi Qing and Li Buqing. Don't let them escape. I'll go back later." Without waiting for Lu Guang to answer, she quickly squeezed into the crowd and searched for that person. Higashio Motetsu didn't think much and quickly followed. He was very curious about who could make the little girl so concerned. Lu Guang looked in the direction they disappeared and couldn't help but sigh. He resigned himself to his fate and walked back. He should go back and report first. The young princess consort had Jean Xian with her, so there shouldn't be any big problems. Chu Qingyan walked through the crowd and turned her head. She saw the person she was looking for, but she didn't act rashly and followed behind. Today was simply the worst day for Hua Xiaoli. Her hibiscus pavilion had been open for half a month, but the profits were far less than fragrant powder pavilions. She came to find the reason today, but saw that her shop was empty, while her opponent had an endless stream of customers. She didn't know if Chen Mingyi knew in advance that she would come to the shop today, but he actually stood in front of his shop and winked at her. He even said that if the shop couldn't continue, she could leave as soon as possible. She was already unhappy about the declining sales, and seeing Chen Jiawang's face, Hua Xiao became angry. "Ah Fu, let's go, I want to drink." "Young master, that's not good. Master will beat you when we get back." Thinking of the 20 strokes he had taken for his master, Ah Fu felt his back hurt again. "Cut the crap. Are you going or not? If you don't want to go, I will go alone. Don't say I didn't bring you along." Hua Xiao impatiently waved his hand and then walked in after finding a restaurant. Ah Fu was helpless. To have such a carefree master, he had no choice but to accept it. At this moment, just as Chu Qingyan was about to follow them in, a folding fan appeared in front of her. She turned to look at the person beside her. "Why are you here?" Higashio Motetsu did not answer the question. Instead, he pointed to the person who had already sat down and ordered wine. "Who is that person? Is it worth you chasing after me in such a hurry?" "The young master of one of the top merchants in Jiangnan." "Hua Xiao, I really want to get to know this person." Chu Qingyan clenched her fists, her eyes shining, as if that person was a piece of juicy meat in her eyes. Hearing this, Higashio Motetsu's eyes revealed a trace of discomfort. He asked, "This person looks so eccentric. What's there to get to know?" Chu Qingyan did not understand why his tone suddenly became harsh. "You know her?" "I don't know her." "Then why are you talking so much nonsense? Don't get in the way of my business. Otherwise, I will cut you in half." Chu Qingyan pretended to threaten him and raised her fist. Higashio Motetsu made a tisk sound, but he had already retracted his hand. Chu Qingyan nodded in satisfaction. "That's more like it." With that, she walked in with large strides. Higashio Motetsu choked on a mouthful of old blood in his throat. Hua Xiao had just finished ordering and was thinking about life with her chin in her hand when someone sat down in front of her. She did not even raise her head as she said, "There are still seats in the restaurant. Please help yourself." Her meaning was very clear. She did not want to share a table with anyone. As soon as he finished speaking, another person sat down. Hua Xiao looked up impatiently when she saw this, but when the person in front of her entered her eyes, a trace of amazement flashed across her face. The youth in front of her was dressed in a snow-white brocade robe with a crimson outer robe. The contrast of red and white gave people a feeling of brightness. His face was bright and clear, his facial features were very exquisite, and his smile was very warm. As for the purple-clothed man beside the red-clothed youth, needless to say, he was simply a monster. He could be described as a jade-like beauty. Hua Xiu raised her eyebrows. When did two such outstanding men come to Jiangnan? How come she had never heard of them before? But although they were good-looking, they were not good enough to bribe her. I've already taken this table. You can go somewhere else. She crossed her arms and said bluntly. Although she knew that Hua Xiu was a woman dressed as a man, but when she met her face to face, Chu Qingyan found that this person dressed as a man was really somewhat outstanding and elegant, if one ignored the shrewdness in her eyes. Chu Qingyan had long understood Hua Xiu's personality. She looked carefree on the surface, but was actually very meticulous. Although she was 17 years old, she was very tactful. Many businessmen who had experienced hundreds of battles had been fooled by her. At this time, she was not polite and went straight to the point. This one is Chu Yan. When I first arrived in Jiangnan, I heard many rumors about young Master Hua. Chu Yan is very impressed and has long wanted to get to know young Master Hua. Unfortunately, I have not found the opportunity. Now that we met on the street, Chu Yan followed. If I have offended you in any way, I ask for young Master Hua's forgiveness. So it was because of her good reputation. Hua Xiu's displeasure faded a little, but she was not someone who could be easily fooled. People who want to get to know me are like carps crossing the river. One more is not much, one less is not much. Unless there's something special about you that I'm interested in. These words were very rude. Even Higashio Motetsu, who was sitting at the side and secretly looking at Hua Xiu, was a little unhappy. Chu Qingyan smiled and did not care at all about the other party's contempt. Her expression was the same as before. Outstanding qualities can be seen by the benevolent and the wise see by the wise. There is an ancient saying that it is a joy to have friends from afar. Meeting is fate. Young Master Hua does not need to care about those empty things. Today, this one will invite young Master Hua to a meal to honor your reputation. At this time, the waiter just happened to bring the wine pot and dishes. Chu Qingyan took the wine pot and personally poured a cup of wine for Hua Xiu. Young Master Hua, please. Higashio Motetsu, who was at the side, saw her actions and his expression became even more unpleasant. This young Master Hua's appearance was ordinary and could not even compare to Xiao Su. Why was this little girl so interested in him? It was simply strange. Chu Qingyan did not notice Higashio Motetsu's expression at all and ordered a few more dishes from the waiter. Hua Xiu supported her chin with a smile on her face, but her eyes were sizing her up. After she finished ordering, she slowly said. Young Master Chu, I don't like to beat around the bush. Just say it. What is your purpose? Chapter 670. So straightforward. However, Chu Qingyan was not annoyed by Hua Xiu's straightforwardness. Instead, she liked this person very much. Young master, since you've asked, this humble one will not beat around the bush. This humble one wants to do a skincare business in Jiangnan, but this humble one has just arrived in Jiangnan and has no foundation, so this humble one has the idea of partnering with you. Recently, this humble one has heard a lot of news that young master intends to expand the rouge and face powder industry. This humble one admires young master's methods and boldness, so this humble one has the idea of partnering with young master. What do you think, young master? Chu Qingyan knew that it would not work if she brought up the matter of partnering with her on the first meeting. As expected. The people who want to work with my master have lined up for several streets. Where did you come from? Hua Xiu did not speak, but Ah Fu, who was sitting beside her, spoke up. Chu Qingyan saw that Hua Xiu did not say anything, so she understood that she had acquiesced to the servant's actions. However, she also admitted that it was normal for others to reject her rashly. Just as she was thinking about how to explain, Higashio Motetsu, who was sitting beside her, had already opened his paper fan and said impatiently, Chu Qingyan, why are you talking so much nonsense with her? There is not only one company in Jiangnan that does this. Besides, your Shuashin lipstick is so unique that it attracted many famous families in Jiangnan. You don't have to worry that no one will buy it in Jiangnan. Just find a random business to partner with and you can make a lot of money. Why do you have to put your hot face on someone's cold face? Chu Qingyan did not expect him to speak up. Originally, she wanted to stop him, but after seeing him give her a meaningful look, she stayed silent out of trust. It was not until the end that she understood the meaning of his words. Hua Xiu did not pay much attention at first, but after these words, her indifferent expression gradually disappeared. You said that Shuashin lipstick is unique to you. That's right. Chu Qingyan was a little surprised to hear her ask about Shuashin lipstick, because she had only taken out this lipstick in the Lan manor of Jiang country. However, she still nodded in response. Chu Qingyan didn't know that after she sold the Snow Heart lipstick at Lan Zhuang, the lady boss of White Sparrow House was obsessed with makeup. Every time she put on makeup, she would cause a whirlwind, and women would scramble to imitate her. Especially 4 years ago, she got a mysterious lipstick that added a lot of color to her face. It was simply the finishing touch. However, after a year, the lipstick was used up. It was said that the lady boss wanted to search for the lipstick at a high price. Unfortunately, after so many years, she still couldn't find it. She had heard of Shuashin lipstick in her industry, but she didn't know if it was just a rumor. After all, rumors weren't trustworthy. However, when Hua Xiu took a serious look at Chu Qingyan, her heart was already racing. If this person was really the owner of the lipstick, then she couldn't let go of this opportunity. However, before she could open her mouth, the purple-clothed man began to rush her again. Chu Qingyan, I'm starving. Let's go. Chu Qingyan noticed the change in Hua Xiu's face just now. She thought that she had a chance. She stood up according to Higashio Motetsu's words. Just as she was about to say goodbye to Hua Xiu, the other party immediately said, Wait. Chu Qingyan and Higashio Motetsu looked at each other, and their eyes revealed a sly smile. It seemed that there was a chance. Words are no proof. Take out the Shuashin lipstick and let me see if it really has the effect of the rumors. Hua Xiu kept the two people, but her words were not impatient and her tone was still calm. Chu Qingyan nodded secretly. Whether it was a merchant or an official, hiding one's emotions was the most important lesson. This one did not bring the Shuashin lipstick with me. It will take half a month for it to be sent to Jiangnan. This time, after going to Fuli mountain range, they would turn to Jiangnan. It was out of her expectations, so she did not bring any skincare cream. She frowned slightly when she sent the letter from Jiangnan and then sent it back from Lian City. She did not know if Hua Xiu could wait for such a long time. As expected, the servant standing beside Hua Xiu said suspiciously, Young Master Chu, you can't be teasing my young master, right? You came to Jiangnan to do business but did not bring a sample. If this were to spread, people would be suspicious. Although the situation was a little tricky, Chu Qingyan still looked at her calmly. Young master, when doing business, sincerity is important. What do you think? Hua Xiu felt that this Chu Qingyan spoke elegantly and naturally, which made people have a good impression of her. That's right. Sincerity is very important. However, thinking about my partner in Hua Xiu, if he does not have a certain level of strength, I'm afraid that he will not be able to cooperate for long. Young Master Chu, don't you think so? Chu Qingyan nodded her head in agreement. Then I don't know what young master's request is. Higashio Motetsu had already done what he could. Although he did not like this person in Hua Xiu, he could not interfere in the matters of the little lass. Therefore, he sipped his tea and sat at the side to watch the undercurrent between the two people's words. Hearing this, Hua Xiu curved her lips and propped up her chin. Her eyes spun around and Chu Qingyan could not help but think of the blue-skinned mouse who had bad intentions. How about this, I'll give you a test. If you can pass it, I'll wait for you for half a month. Chu Qingyan also became interested. There's no harm in saying it. You should know that I have a shop called Hibiscus Pavilion. Recently, the sales of this shop have been a little sluggish. If you can win against Fragrant Powder Pavilion within 3 days, then I'll admit that you have the ability to be my partner. Hua Xiu's expression did not change as she looked at her without blinking. Ah Fu, who was at the side, could not help but widen her eyes. Her master's test was too difficult. Right now, Fragrant Powder Pavilion was like the sun in the sky. Our Hibiscus Pavilion was about to close down. But after all, this was her master. She could not help an outsider. Because she had been busy with the matters of the bank recently, she did not pay much attention to Hua Xiu's shops. She vaguely remembered that when she first arrived in Jiangnan, she encountered a conflict between 2 shops. However, all businessmen were crafty. Chu Qingyan saw Ah Fu's expression and knew that this was not an easy task. However, she did not intend to refuse. Okay. Because of Chu Qingyan's promise, Hua Xiu was in a good mood. She did not intend to drown her sorrows in alcohol and got up to leave. Ah Fu eagerly followed behind his master, his face full of confusion. Master, although this young Master Chu's background is unknown, but isn't your test a little too difficult? Hua Xiu touched her chin and smiled mischievously. Although Jiangnan is full of outstanding people, it's rare to see someone with an outstanding temperament. Moreover, I've been looking at those old men all day long. I'm already tired of looking at them. It's rare to meet someone with a good appearance. Ah Fu heard this and could not help but shiver. Master, so this was your idea. Ah Fu thinks that the new official, Lord Lin, is also quite good-looking. Many girls like him. Hearing this, Hua Xiu's expression changed. Don't mention this person to me. He's pretending to be noble and virtuous. Just thinking about it makes me angry. Yes, Ah Fu blushed with shame. Ever since her master and official Lin had that unresolved grudge, her master did not like this official Lin very much. Sigh. Chapter 671. When Chu Qingyan and Higashio Motetsu walked out of the restaurant, the sky had already turned dark. Why do you suddenly want to do business? This was the most puzzling thing for Higashio Motetsu tonight. Logically speaking, with Xiao Su's wealth, he shouldn't have allowed this little lass to show her face in public. Chu Qingyan was in a good mood and smiled at him when she heard that. Is it very strange? I want to rely on my own ability to support myself, can't I? Higashio Motetsu couldn't help but be puzzled. Little lass, could it be that you lack money? Although money isn't everything, but you can't do anything without money. So I lack money. Chu Qingyan put her hands behind her back and walked forward in large strides. Actually, money wasn't very important to her, but she wasn't alone. She had to consider for her parents and also for the big ice cube. Mining and forging weapons required a large amount of money. If there was a day when they were going to fight with the people in the capital, then they must have enough money. She heard the person beside her open his folding fan with a schwa sound and winked at her seductively. If you lack money, then look for me. Although I'm not as rich as a country, but I can guarantee that you won't have to worry about food and clothing. Hearing that, Chu Qingyan laughed. Your words remind me of the second time we met. You wanted me to be your subordinate. TSK. I didn't expect that after so many years, your lines still haven't changed. He had asked her so seriously, but she had actually mercilessly laughed at him. Higashio Motetsu felt a little defeated. I'm sincere. Chu Qingyan shook her head. She was still smiling, but her tone was serious as she said, Dong Ting, thank you for your kind intentions. However, I want to go out on my own. If I need your help in the future, I won't hesitate to ask. Higashio Motetsu looked at her with a deeper expression. The little girl had finally grown up and had her own ideas. It seemed that Xiao Su had contributed a lot to this. Only he could be so assured and allow her to stumble. However, do you really think that Hua Xiu is reliable? She's a pretty good young woman. She's already taken over her family's business at such a young age, and she's able to share the limelight with the Chen family of Jiangnan. It's obvious that she's an extremely intelligent person. Moreover, I think that she's quite likable to me. She's clever, mischievous, and very clever. After we get to know each other better, she should be an easy person to get along with. Chu Qingyan recalled the confrontation with her today and could not help but smile. Later on, when the two of them got to know each other for a long time, Chu Qingyan realized that although Flower Sleeves looked delicate and cute, when it came to scheming against others, she wasn't cute at all. Higashio Motetsu did not think so. He felt that Flower Sleeves was quite an eyesore. Moreover, when they were at the dinner table, he often saw Flower Sleeves sizing up the little girl. Just thinking about it made his heart uncomfortable. At this time, a carriage stopped in front of the three of them. Chu Qingyan was wondering whose carriage it was when Hualing stuck his head out and greeted her. "Little young master, master saw that you didn't come back this late, so he sent this subordinate to pick you up." When she saw that it was Hualing, she couldn't help smiling. "It's not like I don't know the way. Why would I make a special trip here? Wait a moment, I'll get on the carriage." She turned to look at Higashio Motetsu. Her expression was not as bright as before. "Dong Ting, you should find a place to live in Jiangnan. Although the Moon Palace sect and the Fierce Cavalry have not interfered with each other these past few years, I should still avoid arousing suspicion. So, I can't invite you to live in the private bank." The restaurant's lights shined through the windows and fell between the two of them. The faint light mixed in with the night breeze made it a bit cold. The light and shadow overlapped on their faces, so Chu Qingyan could not see the person in front of her. Inviting a good friend to live in one's home was a kind of courtesy, but Chu Qingyan considered the two of them status, so she could only make it clear. She felt sorry for Higashio Motetsu. But whether he was angry or not, she would not change her mind. At this moment, she saw him put away his folding fan and slightly tilted his face. The night light circled around his almond-shaped eyes and his smile rippled. It was as if a rich and beautiful peony painting had been opened. The endless stream of traffic and the beauty of Jiangnan was overshadowed behind him. Chu Qingyan suddenly felt that even the cold wind passing by them couldn't help becoming gentler. Just as she was slightly stunned, he smiled and said, "It's not easy to be friends, but it's not easy to come by, so you have to cherish it even more, right? Alright, you should go back quickly. It's not early anymore. You've been on the road for so many days, so you should rest well. I have a place to stay in Jiangnan. When the time comes, I'll have Zimo tell you the address. You can go in peace." Hearing the first part of his words, Chu Qingyan felt that this person was quite understanding. But when she heard the last part, Chu Qingyan could not help but roll her eyes at him. "Have a safe trip." After speaking, Chu Qingyan ignored him and walked towards the carriage with Jin Xian. Hualing, who was leaning against the carriage, looked at Higashio Motetsu and frowned. When the young princess consort walked in front of him, he put on a very aggrieved expression. "Little young master, this subordinate is a noble cavalry leader, but I've fallen to the level of a carriage driver. Does this mean that this subordinate is becoming more and more of a failure?" Chu Qingyan seriously looked at him when she heard this. "You feel that being this young master's carriage driver is an insult to you?" These words were chilling, causing Hualing to shiver all of a sudden. How would I dare? To be able to work for little young master, this subordinate can't ask for anything more. Hualing immediately changed his tone. Chu Qingyan finally nodded in satisfaction. "Serve this young master well, and I guarantee that you will be promoted and marry a rich and beautiful woman." Hualing immediately bitterly agreed. The conversation between the two was carried by the wind to Higashio Motetsu's ears. He stood on the bluestone street and watched the carriage gradually move away. His lips curled slightly. He still remembered when he first met her, the little girl had not entered the eyes of these proud and fierce cavalry. Now, they were getting along well, or it could be said that she had become a master that they recognized. The affairs of the world were truly unpredictable. Zimo. This subordinate is here. I'll give you 2 days to buy a manor. Oh, just now you said that there was a place to live in Jiangnan. This subordinate was wondering when we had a property in Jiangnan. If you keep talking, I'll shorten it by 1 day. This subordinate obeys. It was a bit boring on the way back, so Chu Qingyan casually chatted with Huoling. How has the bank been recently? She randomly asked a question. Business is going smoothly. The people from Facing Moon restaurant have already been detained. Shi Qing and Li Buqing have also been locked up. Things are progressing very smoothly. Huoling began to talk about the things that happened in the bank when she left. She couldn't tell that Huoling was a chatterbox. Chu Qingyan nodded and seriously listened. At the end, Huoling's tone suddenly changed, but recently, Master's mood hasn't been good. Why? Chu Qingyan was puzzled. Huoling turned to look at her and said in a hesitant tone, it seems to be because of little young Master. Ah. Chapter 672. She had heard that Big Ice Cube was in a bad mood because of her. Chu Qingyan suddenly gave a cold shiver. What does this have to do with me? I haven't been in the bank for many days. She felt very wronged. Little young Master, this subordinate is not clear on this matter. You can go and ask Master. After saying this, he gave a hoo sound and the carriage stopped in front of the bank. Chu Qingyan couldn't help swallowing a mouthful of water. Originally, she wanted to run over and tell him about the hardships of this trip, but after hearing Huoling's words, she changed her mind. She thought that it would be better for her to go see the big ice block tomorrow and report about what happened on this trip. But when Chu Qingyan came in, she saw Turin standing on the side. She suddenly had a bad feeling. Turin, are you here to admire the moon? Chu Qingyan laughed and quickly walked past him. Young Master, there is no moon today. Turin replied in a serious manner. Chu Qingyan gave a laugh and prepared to muddle through, I was mistaken. You can continue with your work, I'll go back first. I've been on the road for a long time and I'm tired to death. She said this as she walked inside, but it was a pity that Turin's soul-chasing voice could still be heard. Little young Master, Master wants you to come back and take a look at him. What she feared would happen. Chu Qingyan revealed a depressed expression, but she still squeezed out a smile when she turned around, I understand. She slowly walked towards Big Ice Cube's room as countless possibilities appeared in her mind. How did she make Big Ice Cube unhappy? But in the end, she began to suspect if Huoling had tricked her. She had been very obedient recently and she even punished evil. Shouldn't it be praise? Thinking of this, her steps became much lighter. She pushed open the door in front of her and her voice was filled with joy, Big Ice Cube, I'm back. Her joyous words met with the pair of indifferent eyes in the room, and she resentfully stopped. She touched her nose, somewhat at a loss. Didn't I teach you to knock before coming in? Xiao Su lowered his head and continued reading, his tone indifferent. From an outsider's point of view, the Big Ice Cube was a cold and emotionless person. However, Chu Qingyan had been with him for so many years, and she had some understanding of his character. Just like now, his expression, his tone, and his attitude. She could feel the Big Ice Cube's hidden displeasure. She felt a little wronged. In the past, when she entered his door, she never needed to knock. Why did it change after she went out? Oh, I'll start over. Although she was depressed, she still obediently left and closed the door. She took a deep breath and knocked on the door again. Come in. A voice that sounded like a cold gust of wind came from inside. Chu Qingyan pursed her lips outside. The weather had finally warmed up, but it was cooled down by the Big Ice Cube. She pushed the door open and walked in. When she stood in front of him, she asked curiously, Big Ice Cube, why are you looking for me? Did you run into those bandits? The person in front of her was still focused on the book in his hand and asked without looking up. Chu Qingyan was slightly taken aback by his somewhat distant tone. She thought she had heard wrongly. After a moment of shock, she told him everything that had happened on the way here in detail. Although Flowing Light had already written a letter back, a letter could not be compared to an oral account. During the narration, Chu Qingyan secretly observed the person in front of her. Unfortunately, he was sitting sideways on the chair and happened to block the candlelight. The expression on his face was covered by the shadow, and she could not see clearly. However, she could vaguely feel that Big Ice Cube was not actually listening to her. After he finished speaking, his originally relaxed and happy mood had now turned into a somewhat fearful one. Big Ice Cube, that's all. Are you sure that's all? His voice was very soft, but it was mixed with a strong sense of disbelief. The moment he finished speaking, Chu Qingyan subconsciously looked at him. The person sitting in the shadows only had a pair of sharp eyes that sent chills down her spine. This was not the first time she had seen Big Ice Cube like this. In the past, she had always been a bystander. She did not expect that one day, he would also treat her like this. That's all. What else could there be? Chu Qingyan was confused. As soon as the words left her mouth, Chu Qingyan clearly felt the temperature in the room plummet. It was too scary. She had inexplicably angered Big Ice Cube. What exactly did she do to anger the heavens and the people? She felt that Big Ice Cube was really too strange today. It was as if he was a completely different person from usual. She pursed her lips. Standing like this was not a solution. She had to choose a roundabout strategy. Thus, she walked around the desk and went straight behind him. As usual, she wanted to reach out and hold his hand. Big Ice Cube, what's wrong with you today? Why are you denouncing me as soon as you come back? Her soft tone had a hint of coquettishness. If it was any other day, once she admitted her mistake, Big Ice Cube would have already given up on pursuing her. But it seemed that it did not work today. Xiao Su raised his hand to avoid her touch. His face was dark as his gaze met her eyes. Qingyan, are you sure you told me the truth? Her hands hugged empty air and she looked a bit disappointed. When she heard his question, she was even more confused. Xiao Su originally wanted to wait for her answer, but when he saw her helpless and hurt appearance, a sense of defeat suddenly surged in his heart. There's nothing else. You can go back and rest. He placed the book in front of him again and lowered his head to read it. Chu Qingyan felt her nose sting a bit. She had been tense for the past few days because she wanted to help him deal with the situation in the bank. She had come back covered in dust, but she did not want any praise from him because she already felt that she was one of them. She did things for her own people, so there was no need for these formalities. But when she came back, what greeted her was not concern, but rather cold questioning. Her heart fell to the bottom. She really wanted to ask what she had done wrong, but when she met Big Ice Cube's cold eyes, she couldn't bring herself to say anything. I'm going back. She lowered her head in response before quickly turning to leave. Her lowered voice was filled with suppressed sadness. When it fell into Xiao Su's ears, it was like a needle piercing his heart. When the door was closed, he put down the book in his hand. The page was still on the page she had turned when she came in. He had been distracted tonight. He had just wanted to hear her explain the things in the letter, but she had not told the truth. The feeling of being hidden from him made him feel very uncomfortable. Adding on what Father Chu had said last night, he had been thinking about how to treat the little fellow. It was a pity that everything seemed to be the opposite of what he had expected. No matter what problem he had solved in the past, he could calmly deal with it. It was a pity that all his self-control did not work on the little fellow. Thinking of how the little fellow had been injured, he could not help but put his hand on his forehead as a defeated expression appeared on his face. Chapter 673. Chu Qingyan left the room with a very depressed expression. She turned around to look at the silence behind her and a strange feeling filled her heart. It was like something that normally belonged to her had suddenly turned against her. Actually, Big Ice Cube was normally this cold to people, but she had relied on the fact that he treated her differently, so she had gotten carried away. She had forgotten that when they first met, he had also treated her like this. But why was it so sudden? She lowered her head and felt like she had been abandoned by the entire world. At this time, a pair of boots appeared in her line of sight. She looked up in pleasant surprise, but when she saw who it was, she returned to her depressed appearance. Huo Ling couldn't help rubbing his head. Did he have a disgusting appearance? Why did the little princess look like she had nothing left to live for when she saw him? Little young master. He called out to the person in the state of a wandering soul. Chu Qingyan coldly looked at him. What is it? She was not in the mood to chat at all. Huo Ling suddenly felt like the little princess had been possessed by his master, otherwise, why would she have such a cold appearance? It's like this, old Master Chu and old Madam Chu have both come to Jiangnan. They were just talking about you, do you want to go see them now? What? My father and mother came to Jiangnan? Where are they now? Chu Qingyan's eyes instantly lit up. The sadness from before was replaced by a strong sense of dependence, like she had found a safe haven to rely on. They're in the yard next to young masters. Huo Ling had just finished speaking when there was a small whirlwind in front of him and he disappeared in the blink of an eye. He couldn't help smiling. Look at how anxious the little princess was. At this time, he put away his smile and knocked on the door. When the person inside responded, he pushed open the door and walked in. At this moment, the room was dimly lit, giving people an illusion of desolation. Huo Ling looked behind the table, leaning back in the chair with his eyes closed as if he was resting. Master? Huo Ling softly called. What is it? Xiao Su did not open his eyes as he casually replied. Huo Ling couldn't help being stunned. His master's answer was exactly the same as the little princess. He didn't pause for too long and chose his words carefully. Master, just now this subordinate saw the young princess Consort standing outside the door. She seemed to be very sad. Did something happen? He was only a few steps behind the little Wang Fei. As soon as he arrived, he saw her on the verge of tears. This was a rare sight. In the past, no matter how harsh Xiao Laiqi's training was on her, she would always smile and bear it. Other than the time when Master was injured and she cried so sadly, he had never seen the little Wang Fei reveal such a weak side. Hearing Huo Ling's words, Xiao Su slowly opened his eyes. The sharp light in his eyes gradually dissipated in the darkness. Huo Ling, who was waiting for his master's reply, stood there for a long time in silence. He was a little puzzled and couldn't help but raise his head to look at his master. He saw that his master's eyebrows were faintly troubled, as if he was thinking about something. Generally, when a master showed such an expression, it meant that he was thinking about something important. Huo Ling didn't dare disturb them and planned to quietly leave. Just as he took a step away, a clear and cold voice reached his ears. Is she very sad? There was a nervousness in his voice that others couldn't detect. Huo Ling thought he heard wrong and dug his ears. However, when he met his master's gaze, he shivered and immediately replied, this subordinate thinks it should be. Adhering to the creed that he shouldn't speak too much, Huo Ling looked down and didn't look sideways. Xiao Su's eyes revealed a trace of annoyance. In the end, he still hurt the little fellow. He had never been so indifferent to her before. He didn't know how the little fellow was doing now. Huo Ling was thinking about whether he should leave or not when an inconceivable question came crashing down. Huo Ling, if you met someone that you didn't know what to do, what would you do? Jie, master, did you ask the wrong person? But from the corner of his eyes, he saw that his master was still waiting for his answer. Huo Ling braced himself and analyzed the meaning in his master's words. Didn't know what to do. Did his master mean that he met an evenly matched opponent? That's not right. If it was an opponent, how could his master reveal such a confused expression? Hualing suddenly thought of the little princess who had just left and suddenly understood. Was his master asking about how to treat the little princess? But this question, Hualing replied with a sullen face, Master, to be honest, this subordinate has spent all these years with the fierce cavalry. This subordinate doesn't understand the feelings between men and women at all. Seeing Hualing look like he had been struck by lightning, Xiaosu instantly dispelled the idea of asking him. He inexplicably felt that he was very funny, actually turning to any doctor in a desperate situation. I know, you can leave. Xiaosu waved his hand, looking a bit unnatural. He had only asked this question because he had lost his mind. Hualing was about to leave when he heard this, but he took his foot back. He rubbed his head and glanced at his master before boldly speaking, Actually, master, if you don't know how to treat the little princess, you just need to treat her well. Haven't you and the little princess been like this all these years? Xiaosu felt that Hualing's words were the same as not saying anything. There was no constructive meaning at all. Hualing realized that he had said something useless. He gave an embarrassed smile and planned to slip away. Wait. Hualing respectfully stood up when he heard this, Master, what other orders do you have? What is Qing Yan doing right now? Xiaosu asked. Just now, this subordinate told young princess that old Master Chu and his wife came to Jiangnan, so young princess impatiently went to find them. Thinking about it, they should be with old Master Chu and his wife right now. Hualing reported truthfully. Xiaosu nodded. The little fellow hadn't seen her parents for a while. This should be the time for them to reunite. Thinking of this, he stood up and planned to leave. Master, are you going to find the little princess and old Master Chu? Hualing followed after seeing this and asked in confusion. Xiaosu was about to nod when he stopped in the hallway. No, have the kitchen prepare some supper and send it to the yard. He had just gotten into an argument with the little fellow. If he went over now, he would definitely make her unhappy. Hualing did not notice his master's strangeness and said with a grin, Master, if you send someone to bring old Master Chu and old Madam Chu over, the little princess will definitely be very happy. I hope so. Xian Mo's eyes gradually darkened with the night and there was a powerless confusion in her deep eyes. He had not thought of how to handle the relationship between the two of them, but he seemed to have made her run away in anger first. He was a bit regretful of his actions just now, but he could not stand the little fellow's deceit. Little fellow, what should I do with you? Xiaosu had encountered the biggest conundrum of his life. Chapter 674. By this time, Chu Qingyan had already run to the courtyard next door. She had just reached the door when she heard a familiar voice coming from the brightly lit room. Dan Yang, why isn't Kai Kai back yet? Son-in-law clearly said that Kai Kai would arrive in Jiangnan in the evening. Look, the son has already gone home. Why isn't Kai Kai back yet? Perhaps she was delayed by something on the road. Don't worry, Yuan Lang. Let's wait a little longer. I'm worried. Will a big tiger appear on the road and block Kai Kai's way home? It's too scary. I want to find Kai Kai. Sigh, Yuan Lang, just as her footsteps neared the door, Chu Qingyan pushed it open with a smile. She happened to meet her parents' surprised expressions. Father, Mother, I'm back. I wasn't taken away by a tiger. Safe journey. She opened her arms and hugged her two closest relatives in front of her. She smiled brightly, but when she dove into their embrace, she couldn't help but sob. Father, Mother, your daughter missed you so much. She wasn't a sentimental person, but she had been wronged by Xiaosu just now. Now that she saw her closest relatives, she couldn't help but want to get closer. Father Chu was overjoyed to see his daughter. Kai Kai, Father missed you too. Mother Chu also missed her very much, but when she saw father and daughter so close together, she couldn't help but laugh. Kai Kai is already so big, but she still acts like a child. Of course, no matter what, she will always be our child. Father Chu smiled as he raised his hand and patted his daughter's head. Chu Qingyan nodded vigorously. She used her actions to show her approval of her father, but she felt that when he patted her head like that, it was as if he was petting a puppy. The family of three sat down in the room. After the joy, Chu Qingyan was a little puzzled. Father, mother, why did you suddenly come to Jiangnan? I didn't hear anything about it before. Mrs. Chu smiled. A few days ago, His Highness sent someone to pick us up. He said that you might be staying in Jiangnan for a while, so he asked us to come and visit you. At this point, Mrs. Chu's eyes were filled with warmth. I think His Highness did this because he was afraid that you would miss your father and me. Since he didn't tell you, he probably wanted to give you a surprise. When her mother said it just now, she already had this guess, but when her mother said it out loud, her face couldn't help but heat up. I didn't expect my son-in-law to be so romantic. Chu Machen's father rubbed his chin and chuckled. You've really inherited my skills. Hearing this, Mrs. Chu couldn't help but glare at him coquettishly. Chu Qingyan's face turned even redder. However, when she recalled the way he spoke to her in the study, the redness on her face immediately disappeared. What's wrong? Are you unhappy? Did that brat inverted scallion bully you? Tell father, I'll teach him a lesson. When Chu Machen's father saw that his daughter seemed to have lost her soul, he immediately rolled up his sleeves and prepared to rush out of the room. Chu Qingyan hurriedly grabbed her father's arm. Father, you're overthinking it. His Highness and I are fine. Mrs. Chu saw this and said, Yuan, don't be rash. Only then did Chu Machen's father put down his sleeves and smiled. I knew my son-in-law wouldn't bully you. Chu Qingyan snorted when she heard this. Father, what if he did bully me? You can't be so sure. What are you afraid of? You can bully him back. Besides, I'm not someone who would side with outsiders. I even taught him a lesson last night. It's fine. Even if the sky falls, I'll support you. Chu Machen's father raised his chest handsomely, looking like he wasn't afraid of force. Hearing this, Chu Qingyan hugged her father's arm, touched. Father is the best, but, she narrowed her eyes at him in confusion. Father, you said you taught His Highness a lesson? Why? When Chu Machen's father saw that he had let the cat out of the bag, he immediately coughed and laughed. You heard wrong. Father didn't say anything. Under his daughter's suspicious gaze, he immediately changed the topic. Oh right, Kai, let father introduce you to the new members of our family. New members? When she entered the room, there were only the three of them. At this moment, she saw her father happily pointing to one side. Dang, dang, dang. Xiao Fan, and Xiao Fan's three precious children. Chu Qingyan looked in the direction of her father's finger in confusion. When she saw the children clearly, her eyes couldn't help but widen. This is, snow white fur, sharp eyes, languid and noble. The white dogs that father adopted. Chu Machen's father boasted, then called out, Xiao Fan, come over and look at my daughter. She's much prettier than your three children. When Chu Qingyan heard this, the corners of her mouth couldn't help but twitch. Compared to an animal, she was speechless. Unfortunately, Xiao Fan didn't even want to acknowledge her father. Chu Qingyan found it funny and couldn't help but walk over to Xiao Fan, who was lying on the ground. When she got closer, Chu Qingyan saw the three children nestled in Xiao Fan's arms. When she approached, the three of them raised their heads at the same time, and their grape-sized eyes rolled around to look at her. What adorable puppies! Chu Qingyan was immediately charmed by their adorable looks and squatted down to hug them. Chu Machen's father cried out in alarm and wanted to stop her. These were not to be touched. But what stunned Chu Machen's father was that the little white balls had voluntarily left their mother's arms and jumped onto his daughter's lap. Xiao Fan also stood up and rubbed against his daughter's hand. Chu Machen's father felt very hurt. Xiao Fan, I was the one who picked you up and brought you home. What do you mean by this? Seeing the little white balls rubbing against her body, Chu Qingyan was in a good mood. She turned around and said, "Dad, this is called animal affinity." Xiao Fan, who was cold and arrogant, licked Chu Qingyan's hand as if acknowledging her words. This made Chu Machen's father feel even more deflated. "Where did you pick them up? They're so cute." Chu Qingyan asked curiously. Chu Machen's mother replied with a smile, "A few days after you left Lian City, your father went hiking. On the way, he saw Xiao Fan lying on a rock injured, so he brought it home. Within 2 days, it gave birth to 3 babies. But it's strange. Xiao Fan isn't very close to people, but it hit it off with you." She didn't expect that to be the case. She patted Xiao Fan's head and said with a smile, "I wanted to raise a few cats and dogs in the past, but I didn't have any. Xiao Fan is with us. It's pretty good. It can relieve your boredom." "Cats and dogs?" Xiao Fan raised its head in disdain. Right at this moment, someone knocked on the door. Chu Machen's mother opened the door and saw Xining. "Master, old Master Chu, old Madam Chu, this is the supper prepared by the kitchen. I brought it over." Xining walked into the room and said with a smile. Chu Qingyan stood up with the 3 babies in her arms. She pretended to be angry and said, "Xining, why didn't you tell me that you came to Jiangnan? Do you still regard me as your master?" Xining immediately stepped forward and explained innocently, "It's His Highness's order." "I thought you knew." Chu Qingyan waved her hand. "Forget it. I'll let you off this time." The family sat down to enjoy the supper. Just as they were enjoying themselves, Chu Machen's father suddenly asked, "Daughter, when are you going to give birth to a chubby grandson with me?" Chapter 675. Chu Qingyan was confused by her father's sudden question, and the piece of dried meat she was feeding little white ball fell out of her hand. Xiao Fan, who was squatting on the ground, quickly caught the piece of dried meat and brought it back to Chu Qingyan's hand. Mr. Chu raised his hand and knocked on his daughter's forehead, looking very serious. "What are you talking about? Can you give birth to a chubby grandson just by saying, 'Ah'?" Mrs. Chu shook her head and smiled. "It's a grandson. Yuan, you've forgotten again." Oh. Mr. Chu continued, "My daughter, I think my son-in-law is quite good. Don't despise him. Find a good day and get married." Mrs. Chu coughed softly and said helplessly, "Yuan, Kai is still a girl. It's not appropriate for you to say that." "It's not appropriate." Mr. Chu scratched his head and changed his tone. "Then my daughter, pick a good day and let your son-in-law marry you." Mrs. Chu immediately gave up correcting her husband. However, no matter how much Chu Qingyan's father said, Chu Qingyan remained in a daze. Have a child with the ice cube? This was something she had never thought of. And at this moment, the question that she had been avoiding suddenly appeared in front of her eyes. In fact, he had already occupied a place in her heart. But she did not know what kind of feelings she had for him. Family? Friendship? Love? She only knew that she cared about him a lot. She cared about his every word and every action. She was worried that he would get hurt and that he would be lonely. But her father said that she should marry the ice cube. She was used to companionship, to each other, and to relying on each other. But the word marriage seemed to have landed in front of her. It was very strange and confusing. It was as if she was used to living here, and suddenly someone told her that she was moving. Marry him. She bit the last few words of her father's sentence, not knowing what to do. Mr. Chu did not notice his daughter's strange behavior and said excitedly, yes. Kai, you're all grown up. You can marry your son-in-law now. Chu Qingyan recalled the conversation between the two of them in the study. She smiled and said, Father, Mother, perhaps you are thinking too much. His Highness has always treated me as his younger sister. So please don't say such things in the future. Seeing her daughter's strange expression, Chu Machen's mother couldn't help but hold her hand and ask with concern, "Your marriage has been decided by the retired emperor a long time ago, so you can't go back on your words. Mother sees that His Highness treats you very well. Are you misunderstanding something?" Chu Qingyan shook her head. She had heard it with her own ears. How could it be a misunderstanding? Even the slow-witted Mr. Chu could sense that something was amiss. He pulled a long face and said, Kai, tell me honestly. Did someone bully you? Don't be afraid, I'll stand up for you. He looked like he was going to roll up his sleeves again. Although he was a little sad, Chu Qingyan could not help but laugh when she saw her father looking like he was going to pick a fight. Father, don't think too much. His Highness and I are very good. I just feel that maybe we're not compatible. What's not compatible? If you two aren't compatible, who else is? Father Chu was unhappy and muttered. He turned his back to the mother and daughter and walked away gloomily. Chu Qingyan saw her parents' worried expressions and felt a little guilty. But this was between her and the ice cube, so she could not explain it to others. At this moment, Mrs. Chu patted her daughter's hand and said gently, "Did something unpleasant happen between you and His Highness?" Chu Qingyan shook her head against her will. Mrs. Chu seemed to see through her thoughts, but she did not point it out. She said gently, Kai, I've lived for more than 30 years. I've experienced too many things. I've tasted the fickleness of human nature, rich and poor. Maybe I'm not a smart person, but I still have a good eye for people. Chu Qingyan was a little confused. She did not know what her mother was going to say, but she still looked up and listened carefully. The little white balls in her arms also imitated her actions and looked up to listen carefully. When I first found out that you were going to be married to His Royal Highness, I felt like the sky was falling down. Why is fate so unfair? It's not enough to torture me and Yuan Lang, but it's even worse for you. You're only 10 years old, an age when you don't know anything. How can you be betrothed to the King of England, who's rumored to be cruel and bloodthirsty? I felt like I've made the wrong choice. But later, we spent some time with the King of England and realized that he's not as scary as the rumors say. On the contrary, he's very attentive to our family. He knows that your father's legs are uncomfortable in the cold winter, so he asked Ethereal to make 2 pairs of knee pads. The food in the kitchen are all your father's and my favorite. Every once in a while, the wood spirit will send some new toys for your father to play with. He takes care of all aspects of food and clothing. He's even better than you, our biological daughter. You can say that he's like half a son to us. When Mrs. Chu talked about these things, her expression couldn't help but soften, and her tone was filled with relief. She didn't expect that the big ice cube had silently done so much for her parents without her knowledge. She was both moved and emotional. Then we can treat His Highness like a son. He hasn't enjoyed family affection since he was young, so he must treat you as his elders. As soon as she finished speaking, her mother gently pinched her nose. Silly child, if it weren't for you, do you think that His Royal Highness would put down his pride and do so much for us? Mrs. Chu glared at her. She was speechless. I've never interfered in your relationship before because I thought that when you grew up, everything would fall into place. But just because I don't care, it doesn't mean that I can't see the hesitant relationship between the two of you. His Highness is a reliable man. He's responsible and capable, and he handles things appropriately. I approve of him as my son-in-law, but I don't think that we're trying to climb up his social ladder. Our daughter is also very smart and clever. I'm not saying all this to force you. I just want you to see your heart clearly and cherish the people in front of you. Sometimes, if you're still the same person after going around in circles, why don't you make up your mind in advance? Mrs. Chu reached out and hugged her daughter in front of her, speaking sincerely. Mother, your daughter doesn't understand. Chu Qingyan leaned into her mother's warm embrace, frowning as she spoke in confusion. What don't you understand? Mrs. Chu's expression softened. Can I stay by His Highness' side like this forever? I don't want any status, I just want to be like this. Because the big ice cube only treated her as a younger sister, she chose to avoid these things. Silly child, Huling and the others can also stay by His Highness' side forever. If you think like this, then what's the difference between you and Huling and the others? Chapter 676. That's right, in that case, what was the difference between her and Huling? But as long as she could be with Big Ice Cube, what did it matter? Chu Qingyan had just lowered her head when her mother patted her head. She looked up and met her mother's gaze that seemed to have seen through her. She couldn't help but feel a little guilty. Kai, people aren't easy to satisfy. But I think this is pretty good. She replied in a small voice. Mother Chu shook her head and said, You think this way because there isn't anyone else by His Highness' side. Mother will give you an example. If one day, His Highness gets married and there is another woman by his side, will you still think this way? This sentence was like an arrow that hit the bullseye. It peeled off the layers of fog and revealed the essence. If there is another woman by his side, then what would you be by his side? Without an identity, you would be like a shadow. When there is no light, you can only hide in the dark. Chu Qingyan's eyes suddenly widened. So, in Big Ice Cube's eyes, she was his little sister. If there is a woman in his life that he cherishes, then there is no reason for her to stay by his side. She never dared to imagine that one day, if she couldn't stay by his side, all her efforts in the past, all her hopes of walking side by side with him, would become worthless little by little. But he treats me as his little sister. She bit her lower lip as a wave of sadness passed through her heart. Is that so? Did he tell you that himself? Chu Machen's mother said gently and patiently. Chu Qingyan was slightly stunned and then shook her head. No. Then why don't you ask him yourself? Hiding it in your heart and guessing is actually unfair to both of you. Mother Chu said with a gentle smile. She pursed her lips. Mother was right, but she was afraid of the result. If the result was really like this, then what should she do? Mother, do I really have to ask? She hesitated. Mother Chu couldn't help but raise her hand and lovingly pat her head. Kai, do you like His Highness? Mother is referring to the love between a man and a woman. She bit her lower lip and frowned. I don't know. Mother, what is like? She looked up and asked seriously. Mrs. Chu smiled and said, liking someone means that you want to be with him all the time. No matter what happens, you won't leave him or her. Whether he's rich or poor, or whether he's born, old, sick, or dead, you only have eyes for him or her. Are you and Daddy like this too? She was like a curious baby. As soon as her voice fell, she saw that her mother's cheeks were slightly red, which was very moving. Yes. She heard her mother's sweet and timid reply. Chu Qingyan's eyes were slightly wet. Her mother, who was born rich, married her father. She stayed at home when he was fighting on the battlefield. She didn't leave him when he was injured and became stupid. She didn't abandon him when he was driven out of the house. In fact, there was no need to ask. She could feel it with her eyes. Mother, I'm very envious of you and Father. She leaned into her mother's embrace, her voice filled with longing. Silly child, what's there to be envious of? You and His Highness will be the same. Mother, why do you believe in me and His Highness so much? Mother has eyes to see. So Chu Qingyan drifted back to her room like a wandering ghost. She didn't regain her senses until she put the hot towel on her face. At this time, a noise from the room attracted her attention. She turned her head and saw that one adult and 3 children, who were in her parents' room just now, were squatting by her feet. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but widen her eyes. Xining, why are Xiao Fan and the others here? Xining, who was making the bed, couldn't help but smile when she heard this. Mistress, you've been too distracted. You only just noticed their existence. When you left Master Chu's room just now, they followed you. It seems that they really hit it off with you. After knowing the reason, Chu Qingyan lowered her head to look at the family of 4 who kept looking at her. She felt that it was a bit inconceivable. You want to live with me? She just casually asked and didn't expect them to understand. She didn't expect that the 3 little ones would run over and rub against her calf. The older one also didn't seem to object. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but feel that these little ones were quite human. So she ordered Xining to prepare a nest for these little ones. Then she changed her clothes and prepared to rest. She had been running around for the past few days and should fall asleep as soon as she hit the bed, but she couldn't fall asleep. In the end, she simply hugged the quilt and sat up. She put her chin on her knees and fell into deep thought. Should she ask Big Ice Cube? But what if the answer was yes? Then what should she do? No, did she like Big Ice Cube? All the questions gathered into a messy ball of yarn, but she couldn't find the end of the thread. It only became more and more messy. She scratched her hair into a chicken's nest and finally resigned herself to lying in the quilt. Forget it, she would ask him tomorrow morning if he treated her like a child or a little sister. If that was the case, she would quietly accompany him. If one day she had to leave him, then she would be prepared. Then if he didn't, she scratched her head and couldn't think of a reason. After the answer came out, she would think about what if he didn't treat her as a little sister. However, she wouldn't be nice to him from the start. Who told him to be so fierce to her today? She would give him a taste of his own medicine. After making the decision, Chu Qingyan fell asleep in a daze. On the other side of the bank, there was also a person who couldn't sleep at night. Xiao Su was holding a teacup in his hand. The tea in the cup had already turned cold, but he didn't know. At this time, he was in a difficult situation. In the past, if he encountered a difficult problem, he would always gather his aides to discuss it together. For example, how to discipline the child 5 years ago. But now he couldn't do the same thing again. Because he couldn't test his aides on how to deal with the relationship between a man and a woman. If this spread out, it would damage his image in front of his subordinates. So the first person Xiao Su thought of was Yiling Feng. In the past, he was the one who wandered among the flowers. Now that he was married and had 3 children, he should have more experience than him. But when he picked up the brush, Xiao Su felt that distant water couldn't quench his thirst, so he put it down again. He rubbed his forehead. He felt that this matter really made people feel helpless. It was better to deal with military matters. Moreover, he felt that he had to be serious and careful about this matter. Thinking of how he made the little fellow sad today, he felt a bit of regret. At this time, he thought of a person and couldn't help standing up. Huo Ling, this king needs to go out. Huo Ling was a bit surprised when he heard this. It was almost the middle of the night. Master, you've been sitting here all night and you still have the mood to go? It was a pity that his master had already opened the door and left. Although he was confused, Huo Ling still immediately followed. The most beautiful moment wasn't the moment when they held hands, but rather the hazy journey towards the other party. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.